92.5.
Let me welcome in my guest to the studio. He's already seated. Former Minister for Finance of the Republic of Ghana, Honorable Seth Tepe. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, and good morning to your listeners.
Nice to see you.
Thank you very much.
I'm wondering what you have been up to since leaving power.
Well, I've been doing various things. One of my preoccupations in a prior life was consulting, so I do a bit of consulting. I also work with the multilateral institutions on various programs, for example, such as the review of the PEFA, which secretariat is hosted in the World Bank. I chair the advisory committee for the new program that is going to be done from 2021. Another passion of mine is teaching. So I do teach, I do research, I do write. I believe you've seen some of my writing. Yes, but I do teach in the University of Ghana, business school, both undergraduate and graduate programs. Very exciting. I had occasion to also lecture. I presented a lecture on health financing in Ghana at the School of Public Health. I think it's important, to talk to, the future leaders of this country.
Okay.
Not just about our experiences, but also to give them some, hope about the country if we manage well.
Well, so we brought you in this morning to talk about, first of all, the economy as it is right now, the challenges with the CD. But before that, I believe you listened to your successor.
But have you noted that he's still preoccupied with 2014, 2016? When in a statement, he should be talking about the current conditions in the country. I mean, this
when you listen to him carefully, he said that he needed to tell that history in order to see exactly where we have come from.
The history should be telling.
Yeah.
The 2-year history, or let's say even 4-year history, is a promise to Ghanaians not to borrow.
Okay.
So I don't think that he's the best person, to be talking about borrowing. I think, what we should be hearing is an apology to Ghanaians first, that they're in the market to borrow. He was talking about 1 billion. And for a government that said they were not going to borrow, he's throwing parties and things, on the 3 billion, borrowing. And they borrowed in 2 years, more than we did in 4 years. But on that specific, you will notice that specific debt was, bond was isolated. That was the 2015 bond.
Okay.
And I think the context is important. 2015 was when the crude oil prices fell. Remember, we had done the budget, with $99. Crude oil prices fell to close to $40. We went to Parliament to even revise the budget. 2016, the fall continued. And we went to Parliament even in an election year, talk about fiscal discipline, to trim the budget further. We had bonds to refinance in that 2015. And the domestic rates, and I'm glad that he has been talking about the need to refinance. I think after the presentation, the administration is now talking about refinancing domestic bonds so that we depend more on domestics, that is locals. But we had 3-year and 5-year bonds to refinance in that year, and the interest rate was inching towards 30%. The prudent thing, I think it's still prudent to borrow at 10.2%, to refinance or to pay off bonds that were in essence whose rates were, if we had refinanced, we're heading towards 25-30%. But I think the more important thing again to recall, the record is that when we went to Parliament with that particular bond, because we used the entire 1 billion to refinance, the opposition at the time said, apart from the promise not to borrow, that you don't borrow to repay debt. And even this year's bond is going to be used partially for refinancing.
I hear 1 billion of it.
It's going to be used for refinancing. But the backdrop is the fall in crude oil prices and the movement of money out of the emerging markets at the time by Saudi Arabia and others to shore up their budgets. And therefore,
you think the comparison does not suffice?
No, it doesn't, because the context. Again, because that is exactly what's happening. You cannot compare a situation where crude oil prices had fallen to $40. We should be talking about current situation. Crude oil prices have rebounded. Last year, it hit $80 per barrel. So you are comparing apples and oranges. You're also talking about our dependence on, one oil field compared to 3 now. Outputs increased from our average of 73,000 barrels per day, even lower if you take the Jubilee turret bearing at the time, to outputs of nearly 200,000 barrels per day. You're talking about giving those low outputs of around 70,000 barrels per day and crude oil prices tumbling to about $40. We earned, and by the way, I'm quoting from the 2019 budget for the avoidance of doubt, page 48. In 2016, we earned $172 million from oil. In 2017, this increased to $362.6 million. In 2018, up to September, when the budget was presented, we had earned $723 million.
That's a significant jump.
Of course, yes. It's about six-fold increase. So why is the cedi depreciating? If that amount of forex, is flowing into the economy, why do we even have a deficit? And why do we have a deficit reported at 3.7 and lacking the courage, to add the bailout cost, which increases the deficit to 4.4 on a rebasing basis, compared to the conditions I'm talking about when we were doing an rebase around 5%, even including the 7 billion in 2017 for which they did offset. I challenged the minister to show us through the gift miss. He said we left 7 billion, right? I've been making this point. The MBB said we left 7 billion of arrears, which is what was included in the 2017 budget. In that same 2017 budget, they did an offset of 5 billion. So the arrears they carried forward was 2 billion only. They never paid, and that is why the contractors have not been paid. It's there. And to buttress it, the Auditor General, recall, did an audit of that 7 billion. And the Auditor General admitted in that report that it wasn't something that was being hidden. It was a compilation that we had made. And the budget guidelines for that year is quoted. I downloaded it and I was teaching budget guidelines, right? Immediately I brought it up, it was put, off the Ministry of Finance, website. We compiled it because we issued the 2017 budget guidelines. It was a shift to accrual accounting. They did an offset, they never paid, and that's why contractors, and that's why today you're even talking about factoring. Discounting the amount that you have to pay to creditors. It's never happened in our country. Discounting what you have to pay to them. So I think that with these, figures and revenue is still falling, and we have a depression, I think the minister should be talking to Ghanaians about this. So let me give you another figure. Okay. The minister spoke about the Kufuor administration issuing the first sovereign bond, which he quoted, in what he just presented.
Yes.
Are you aware that we, despite the paltry amounts of money we were receiving in comparison, relatively speaking, put up a sinking fund? By the time we were leaving office, we had paid down that debt. Excuse me. Excuse me.
Oh, so
we had used $336 million of that oil revenue because we needed to manage debt. You know, we're very big on managing debt. To pay off 336 million of the 750 million, bond, we left 200 million US dollars of oil revenue in the sinking fund, which was used to take off the bond on October 4th, because 2007 to 2017, the 10th year, right? He didn't have to come and pay that debt. We paid it. The bond which he was citing, we paid it, and we refinanced the balance. In other words, we use the sinking fund. We use the sinking fund, to excuse me. We use
Honorable, let me allow you to take a sip of water, but just to announce that
yes,
this Alhaji and Alhaji, the mother of all talk shows, and we are hosting the former finance minister addressing some of the issues that were raised in the presentation made to Parliament by his successor, Honorable Kenny Boyata.
Yes, thank you very much, and apologies to your listeners. We used about 500 million US dollars, about 550, to pay off a portion of the 750.
Okay.
The remaining 220, 250 thereabout, right? We have the right figures. Guess what? The bond which Honorable Kenneth Fureta is talking about, that is the 2015 bond. We used it to refinance that 2007, the balance of the 2007 bond. And that's the only reason the MPP administration did not have to look for money to refinance, or pay off. By the way, the sinking fund, and this again is from the fiscal tables, 2018. And by the way, the energy report, the oil report did not mention this. As at the last quarter of 2018, the sinking fund, which formula we, put in place, which attempt was made to save, had accumulated 2.173 million Ghana cedis. If you convert even at 5, that's about, 400 million or so US dollars. In actual fact, it comes in as hard currency.
Okay.
Not a penny has been used. And we are adding to that. So this is the record. This is a true record. There's no accounting in both, the PRMA report and in the budget as to how this money was used. Has it gone into consumption? Because by 2019, the figure was going down. So you see the prudent approach, we had, so there were circumstances. And during that period, which the MPP likes to choose, 2015 and 2016, countries with significant resources, from Nigeria to Angola to, went into recession. South Africa is still in recession. Ghana we didn't take the country into recession because of these pressures. And this is why I keep saying that, given the fact that there's about 6-fold increase, in fact, the variance between 2017 and 2018, quoting from the budget, I'm talking about the budget, it's about 360 million additional US dollars.
From oil alone.
From oil alone. And this is not total oil for including what goes to, the partners. This is oil money that is accruing to Ghana from royalties, Jubilee, Ten, Sankofa, from carried and participating interest, surface rentals, and so this is money that has gone into our coffers. So I think the comparison we should be making is, the utilization of oil, revenues to make sure that the economy is stable. At least we, as I said, performed under very trying and difficult conditions. I remember that was a period also when the gas pipeline was disrupted and we had to buy crude for VRA to produce power. We resolved through the badge, and others. Today we are experiencing doomsday again. The energy sector debt is not paid, despite ESLA. ESLA is bringing in 3 billion Ghana cedis annually since 2016. The bulk of ESLA 2016 was actually pushed into 2017. And in spite of it, so you're talking about half of this, about 1.5 or so, is meant to resolve the amount which the energy sector is owing to the banks. We did the first refinancing, right? What do we see of the banking sector? More borrowing, and the ESLA bond which we wanted to lapse, the levy to lapse in 3 to 5 years, was extended through a bond that was 10 years, 7 years, which means that ESLA is going to be extended for 10 years. And that means that on current, and crude oil prices are falling. These estimates that are coming, remember, ESLA is a proportion of, petroleum that is consumed, right? So if you have issued a bond and you are backing it with a levy that is bringing in 3 billion or 1.5 billion, for energy sector debt owed to the banks, alone, you're talking about $15 million over the 10-year period. Why go borrow again? When we are told that the total liability for the banks, is 7 to 9 billion, or uppermost 12 billion. There's enough money to have used to refinance. From the ESLA alone, half of the amount of ESLA alone.
So you think if some of the borrowing is even unjustified?
I think no. I wouldn't say justified or not. We had a cap under the ECF, which has gone up, of $500 million borrowing, right? And by the way, there was a very, curious comparison of saying that we went to the market to borrow 750, which was oversubscribed anyway, 3 times, and comparing it, as paltry 750 million to 3 billion that was oversubscribed, right? We accepted our borrowing. The federal administration that said we were not going to borrow. And the restraint we were showing to bring the rate of borrowing down, and the rate of borrowing is going up. Again, it's in the budget. It's right in the budget. That the rate at which we are increasing the debt, and that is the most dangerous thing. This is it. You can see for yourself. From 2013, it was going up. Then from 2014, and I'm reading from page 54, you see the decline. That's the rate of the nominal going up, yes, but the rate at which the debt is increasing decline. And you can see it stopped in 2017 and it has started going up.
Okay.
And this is September 2018 report, before the year ended, with the borrowing to support, the deficit and the current borrowing that has been done. So Ghana's debt, the rate of increase is going to go up. And we are at risk of debt distress. It's in the IMF report. Right. So I think these are the fundamentals, which the Honorable Minister, should have been talking about. We're talking about facts. Some of it are from the budget and from the petroleum reports.
So your point is that looking at what
my point is that my point is to come back to. So with that level of revenues coming in, with that lower level of borrowing that we're doing compared to what is being done now, both domestic and foreign, we have more to show by way of infrastructure. And
that was the point I was going to make.
Yeah, we have more to show.
You are basically saying that they should be telling us what they are using the money
precisely
they are borrowing from.
In fact, when we were in office, we had to go to Parliament to show the use of funds anytime we went to the bond market. And by the way, the bond that is under reference, we use part of it to complete the build down, because we had said that it wasn't prudent to be using
which of them, the 750 or the 1 billion?
All the bonds that we did.
Okay.
We didn't use everything for projects, even the projects which we were bullish on. We used part of it, all the bonds that we did, including the 2015, which was entirely for refinancing. We used part for refinancing, and then we used part to complement. For example, so let me a travel plan and build down, which was started by the previous administration. The project is 100%. The loan covers 85%. What we were doing was we were taking the difference as a budget deficit, right? Or budget financing, and then going to the treasury bill market without dedicated. That's why we started the domestic bond and longer term bonds and the rest. So we directed part of the borrowing to complete those projects with a view that those projects will continue to repay the facility, which is the design the way Airport Terminal 3. But the point is, despite these restraints and lower level of borrowing, you can see the infrastructure. I think Ghanaians can see for themselves how we use the money, for the productive sector of the economy. So I'm afraid I am unfazed by the criticisms. No, it doesn't worry me.
So based on what you've seen over the last 2 years, you can say that you did far better than they are doing.
Of course, the evidence is there, right? And if all that can be done, with 6-fold increase in revenue, is to compare your record, right, with a record at the time the whole globe was in crisis, following, you remember the BRICS, the BRIC economies, that is the Brazil, India, China, which was the engine for growth. All demand went down. Yeah. And it was that demand that went down that led to the fall in the crude oil prices, together with the shale gas incidents, from the... So the context is important. Right. And of course you can, make a presentation knowing very well that these are complexities which, not every Ghanaian would understand, so, and make it look, bad, as I said, right? But I believe for the markets, and for middle class, and for economists and others, they understand what I'm talking about. And very soon it will be, So I'm saying that with all this revenue, why do I do offsets and not pay contractors? When we had single spine, remember, we made a full disclosure on national television and showed the amount that was owing. And we met with labor. And we paid them over a period of time, explicit, annually. We didn't have to hide it. So with all this revenue that is flowing, from both oil, from our taxes, which ought to go up, and from borrowing, I expect a better performance.
Which they are not delivering. We're also talking about the fact that, looking at the inflows from the oil sector, we shouldn't be having the situation the city is in currently.
Yeah, the figures speak for themselves. And remember, commodity prices have rebounded. So cocoa, gold have also rebounded. At the time, the period which there were all three commodity prices were falling. Right. So the figures speak for themselves. That the economy should have been, and it's not set up where we're saying it. Remember, we were talking about the prospects for the economy just before we left office. And we were citing the IMF, the World Bank, African Development Bank, for credibility. Talk about, policy credibility. That what we are saying, when you say you do a program for policy credibility, right, it doesn't necessarily, it doesn't have to be an adverse, adverse implications. You are saying that what you are saying is buttressed by institutions with expertise, with institutions which are about global development. And they are saying what the Mahama administration is saying is true. And what they said of the Mahama administration and the trajectory after our investment in Sankofa and Tenfield, right, was that on account of crude oil and gas, exports alone, even the growth should have been better. Non-oil sector growth shouldn't be sluggish. Non-oil sector growth performed between 2016 and 2017 on the rebase basis the same as we did with those depressed conditions.
So we should be taking off by this time, like you were saying, because in the administration there were several times when you said that from 2017 things should look better.
Yes, and the figures they are, the figures which the minister was citing.
So why are we struggling?
Why are we struggling?
With the city and also the economy and everything.
No, it's consumption. It's as simple as that. Electoral promises. Remember the electoral promises, for example, when you talk about doing one district, one factory. You remember the phrase? We know how to generate revenue. We don't have to borrow. Right?
Yes. That was the promise of the vice president.
Yeah. So that was they were going to show prowess in generating revenue to finance those projects. Today they are capping, statutory fund. I think Get Fund is going to go to Parliament, and maybe you can bring our MPs, because it's usually closed door session, but the document is public, and see the proportion since 2017. So education is being deprived, district development is being deprived because of the capping and taking money from those funds, because, as promised, just like borrowing, as promised, the revenues are not coming in. The revenues are not coming in to do those projects. We did Exim Bank, EDIC Fund, Exim, the forex issues we are talking about, part of the resolution. And I'm glad that the non-partisan committee that, is going to be set up, according to, and from the minister's own interviews and, and the presentation, we are now going to think structural and think about management. We had thought about structural already. And one of our structural solutions, remember we spoke about sinking fund, to pay back, for which nothing is being paid, even though we remember our infrastructure fund, which partly invested, in Airport Terminal 3 and was going to be the anchor for Airport City 2. Remember Exim Bank? Exim Bank is a structural for trade finance, to represent exporters. The revenue and the vision of an outward-looking economy is reversed, and it's being used. The funds, for outward-looking economy is what is being used to supplement one district, one factory, domestic. Of course, there is a linkage between domestic, which is what we wanted to do, but then you have to do it concurrently. Okay. And we had a farmer services. The Excellency often spoke about the farmer services centers, which are going to be established to link the economy outwardly. And so I'm afraid, the record and the measures and the policies, that we initiated, which were condemned, bastardized, today are the ones that are being implemented. Refinancing, borrowing strategically for projects, right, not for consumption. Right. So I think this is the true situation.
You just talk about the structural issue. You are basically making the point that there were things that you did that were supposed to address the structural issues that were being raised about the economy. Because every time the matter of the cedi comes up, the point that is always made is that the structure of our economy is the reason the cedi keeps depreciating.
Let me give you 3 examples. We were borrowing. Let me tell you the principle of treasury bill for 90 days, when you say 90 or 91 days, is that when the government buys treasury bills, right, from you, your money, at the end of 90 days, it will be retired. In principle, this is what it means. If the government borrows for 3 years, 5 years, the principle is at the end of the 3 years and 5 years, the bond, the money, the debt will be paid. Okay. And like the sovereign bond, which I spoke about, at the end of 10 years, we were supposed to pay off, either be paid off. We had gotten into the habit of borrowing, and then we go to the market and borrow, to refinance. And so you would hear something about, rollover risk. We were rolling over. So we said, wait a minute, you can't be doing the same thing and expect change. And that explains the sinking fund. We are saying, yes, we have needs. We have consumption needs, right? But to manage the fiscal well, you must generate revenue, you must manage expenditure prudently, and when you borrow to finance major projects, which are in the budget, you must have a scheme for paying. And so we put part of the oil revenue aside to pay. This is a structural change. And that means that the markets will respect you. The markets know that you are not borrowing and going to pile up. So when you stop that, right, when you stop using the sinking fund, as I said, 2 billion sitting there, to buy back, and you are pushing it to consumption ostensibly, then you are not forging change. Okay. Another one, if you do commercial projects and then you issue sovereign guarantee, and instead of the commercial project paying for itself, you burden the taxpayer, you continue increasing your debt. That's why we established the infrastructure fund for commercial projects that can pay for itself, which is different from, let's say, a rural hospital or a rural road. Those ones is growth in the economy, which those projects bring about, that pays, for that through taxation and through revenues, more taxes because there's more output. So back to, exports or the currency. The problem is one, management on a day-to-day basis.
Okay.
But the core issue is the limited resources that we generate, right? And it would have been hopeless if the situation today would have been hopeless if additional 600 million or so had not flowed into the, compared to 2016. But then we've been talking about non-traditional exports in this country. Before I started my career in the Ministry of Finance, and when I was in the Ministry of Finance and left, yes, we have a strategy for exports, for promotion, but we didn't have an instrument for trade finance. Just as you didn't have an instrument for, debt, you didn't have an instrument, for or institution to manage debt. You didn't have an instrument and institution, to manage your borrowing and distinguish commercial from. And why do you need to distinguish commercial projects from the non-commercial? It is because you've become middle-income country. Another reason is that you've become middle-income country. And you are losing your grants and concessional financing. So the thinking is you channel the concessional financing into the social infrastructure projects. So that commercial projects will pay for itself. And there's precedent. That's what was done. That's what Kwame Nkrumah did. For Akosombo Dam paid for itself. Tema Harbour paid for itself. Only the money was going through the consolidated fund. And that made VRA doses winsome. So you just have to say that we've done that. And that's why National Investment Bank was established. And I hope that we don't sell it. Because part of the agenda for GATT is, because that's our investment bank. Right. So if you want to support exports, then you need another deep structural change. And this is export finance. And so you establish the Exim Bank, which pools, if one exporter is exporting 20 million, accessing finance, right, it's difficult. If you bring, 100 of those exporters, right, let's be modest, even 10, right, times 20, US dollars, that gives you 200 million. An Exim Bank with a proper correspondent bank and nurturing the process can borrow better for 200 million. Is that an example to what I'm saying? Cocoa board. This is the philosophy. This is not the farmer who goes to do his own marketing and whatever. And cocoa board borrows at LIBOR plus 2.5. LIBOR less than 2%. That's the only institution, better than even government. And that's the model. So Exim Bank is not, if we needed banks, there are enough banks for the domestic market. So, the trumpeting of Exim Bank as if it was doing something, great, by financing domestic political, is misplaced. Sorry to say. That was and we borrow from Exim banks, from China Exim, Turkey Exim, India Exim, and all those, right? If they were looking inward, they wouldn't be bringing their products and things to us. So we do. So we had this structural, and we can go on. We had a lot of structural, measures, many of which were stopped because they were misunderstood. Right.
And okay, so let's come to the issue of the CD. But if you just join us, you're listening to Honorable Seth Tekpe. Is our first agenda on Alhaji and Alhaji today. We are talking to him about some of the issues some of the economic issues that we'll be discussing on our first topic today, because the finance minister was in Parliament earlier on. But I want to go back to the issue of the CD because it is one of the biggest issues under discussion today. Is one of the reasons government was perhaps celebrating the $3 billion bond. Now, you are saying that if you look at the inflows that are coming in, the city should not be struggling the way it is doing. But government has also been talking about the fact that the IMF exit may have forced some investors into pulling out, and that put a lot of pressure on the city.
I don't think that has anything to do with it. with additional revenue, coming in, and if the sinking fund and other borrowing strategies had worked the way we had envisaged, right, the rates is the rates that should be going down for both domestic and for, yes. So that's another element.
So
right?
if I followed through with your plan?
No, yes. If I did, 10.75, and by the way, I did bonds, which the minister didn't mention, at 8.25, right, and around 8%, and then around 9%. Right, always you see, as I said, the obsession is, with figures that, make
them look
feel
better.
good. Yes, yeah. But I'm saying as if the figures I'm talking about here, right, which for 2018, 2016, as we were building up as we were building up the sinking fund, right. At the end of by February 2016, the sinking fund had 38 million Ghana cedis. By the last quarter, and this is 2016. Remember, we had been using the sinking fund. Even then, the sinking fund still had a balance of 109, apart from what we had set aside, to take off.
The 2007 bond.
Yes. So you compare 109, right? And it was effective, because no person who was holding the bond, that bond came to us and said, in fact, by the time we had taken off 300, we had refinanced, remember what I said, and the 336 million, the interest rate on that bond had gone down to 4.5%. Okay. And that's why those who were holding it at 8.5 decided to hold it, to term. Now you are comparing these figures. Yeah. So as a debt instrument, right, as an instrument for managing debt, if it was effective in taking off, in addition to liability management, right, the 2007 bond, can you imagine what would happen if, and with flows of 100 million and 38 million, and cumulatively to 100 million, and after we had used part of it and all that, compare it to 2.173 billion. And I'm quoting from the Ministry of Finance's own, So can you imagine? So we shouldn't even be feeling proud about doing a bond of 8.5 if we had continued with these debt management strategies. Because from 10.75, we didn't do, that was 2015. In 2016, even in anticipation of Tenfield, which we told the markets, before Sankofa even came on, we did less. The rate went down. And remember when we did the refinancing, Treasury bill rate started going down. Right? Just as the debt itself, as is the budget, started going down. So these policies were working. Right? So that's the premise. I'm saying that the budget itself shows that these policies were working. Because you can see the rate of decline of accumulation, fell from where this line. This is a nominal, right? This is a nominal. We were, at one point, the rate of accumulation was about 50%.
Yeah.
Right? Because remember, post-HIPIC, right? Post-HIPIC, we didn't have the respite from HIPIC anymore. HIPIC came to an end. I brought HIPIC to an end. Now, it started, the rate of increase started going down to 11.47% from that high. That's the rate at which you were increasing. And that's why when you do that you see. So when you point out to the nominal, right, like it was done, 73% and all that, the underlying, is your ability to slow down the rate of borrowing, which has started going up again. And I'm saying if these policies, 2 billion had been used to take off, let's say, the next bond that we did, or to refinance. And by the way, we had projected that the sinking fund, based on Jubilee alone, was going to bring in about 300 million, US dollars. And the average redemption, because we started doing something called soft amortization, annual redemption was 333 million, which means that Ghana was capable of taking off 75% of its bonds annually. But we stopped it. We stopped it. And so, and nothing is said. I mean, the budget, you read it, nothing is said of no mention of sinking fund. What is happening to sinking fund? Which, by the way, is part of our reserves. Right? So apart from the revenue, because it's part of the revenue. So any balance that's part of our reserves.
So aside the issues you are raising, you're also raising issues about disclosures and transparency. The fact that a lot of what you used to put out in the public domain to give an idea as to where we're going are not being put out in the public domain, the budgets that you're seeing. Well,
I stand for correction, but what I'm saying is that, I don't see them in the budget, and these are petroleum reports, from which I don't see a detailed explanation. Right, so that's the point I'm making.
But perhaps was it not because maybe this may be a criticism of the current minority, because at the time there was a lot of demand on you in Parliament by the then minority to make some of those disclosures?
No, we passed a law.
And the law demanded that?
No, nothing was forced on it. Remember, we passed 2 laws, right? First was the Petroleum Revenue Management Act under Professor Mills, which said, let us be accountable to Ghana. Nobody forces. We were in an IMF program. Nobody forced Ghana.
Okay.
Right? The second one is the Public Financial Management Act, out of which the Budget Responsibility Law was lifted, Section 12 to 18. It's from the Public Finance Management Act. And it is these laws which are asking for accountability, right, including the establishment of PIAC and others. Yes. So it wasn't forced on us. It was when we formed the fund, they've been pushing for Budget Responsibility Act, but when we formed that, we wanted to do a more comprehensive Public Financial Management Act, that we, put it as together with the fund as a performance criteria. Yes.
Now let's talk about the IMF. You went into the IMF. You said you wanted policy credibility. That was why you went into.
We went into the IMF for pragmatic reasons. And the pragmatic reason is, one, going into the elections of 2012, the pipeline that supplies gas to Ghana from Nigeria was ruptured, if you remember, by the pirate ship.
Yeah.
It took 2.5 years to fix it, which led to doomsday. Often we discuss doomsday without discussing the underlying, because of course it was popularized and made to look like incompetence. And the reason it delayed is, if you are going to fix the pipeline, then you put in temporary fixes, which will have to go away. But we were promised it to be done, remember, 3 months, 6 months, and it took 2.5 years. So the badges and others, explained. The second reason was the pressure which single spine, was bringing. Third reason, and we had to liberalize as part of the structural measures, was subsidies. And then the fourth reason was, the melting of by 2014, it was clear that global growth, was softening. Right? So it was a pragmatic measure. So if you take that, you are using significant amounts of foreign exchange to buy crude instead of gas for VRA to run thermal plants. And this is my point I've been making. Right? Remember, we did homegrown, and the essence of homegrown is you say we have become middle income. Let's try and manage on our own. But it is these measures, which made us take the homegrown and said we wanted to do what is called a policy support instrument, but we had to do a full program because we were using those resources to buy crude. We're having those pressures from the budgets and others. So the global institution for developing countries, and in fact advanced countries, I'll come to that, which can help you in such situations, the IMF and the World Bank. That's why they were set up. And remember, during the global financial crisis, at the time we were, being described as being incompetent for going to the IMF, Portugal, Ireland, Greece, Spain, the so-called peaks of some of them went to the IMF. Nobody would have thought that these advanced countries, including Iceland and others, would ever go to the IMF. But the lesson is you go to the IMF when you are in need, right? But you learn to pay, or do it without a program, and then, without the loan that comes with the program. And by the way, I've noticed the softening of the tone. There was no mention in the 2019 budget when it was read, saying that the realistic thing is that we'll leave the IMF program, but we'll be faced with Article 4.
What is Article 4?
Article 4 is the article that establishes the IMF.
Okay.
You know, the document. It has articles. And Article 4 compels every member state of the IMF to open their books for the IMF, whether you're in a program or not. Whether you give money to the IMF for them to lend to other countries or not. So the US has to submit, Germany has to submit, Ghana has to submit, You know, so we were saying that in the IMF, investors and others, development partners, will take a signal when they come and do Article 4. Because it's just like a review. Right? And some of them be pragmatic. Yes. So, yeah, of course, that's and they do it periodically. If you go to the IMF website, you Google Ghana, you'll see it. But the point we you know, some of us are making is that, yes, of course, we should, like homegrown, beyond aid. It's an imperative. We have become middle-income countries, like the Asian countries. A group of African countries must, you know, step out.
So the Ghana beyond aid is a necessity.
Of course, you become middle-income country. You are not going to, even if, look, we're saying that oil revenues would increase, oil output would increase to about 500,000 barrels, you know, per day, right? We are getting to the point where we will be like, you know, and in fact, part of the guarantees that we did, that was the reason, because you have to move from IDA borrowing, which is a concessional borrowing, you know, given by the World Bank, African Development, and you move to what you call a hybrid, which means that you pay more and you pay at a shorter period. So, for example, 2013, I got a letter which said Ghana can no longer borrow and repay over 40 years. You can only borrow and repay over 25 years. And this would change. So we have to plan for it, right? And that comes with mature, you know, systems, and which is why we did things like GIFMIS, you know, and the rest, so that we can take a hand, you know, have a handle, particularly on causes of budget overruns and the rest, right? So I'm saying that IMF, of course, has a reputation, and for a left of center person, you know, looking at the party to which I belong, thinker and whatever, of course, it's viewed of, you know, as a neo-colonial institution and whatever, right? But in dealing with neo-colonial institutions, you have to be smart and use your resources. You know, so you use then the IMF, you move first to an intermediate position where you say, we'll manage. You come and do Article 4 or policy support instrument, right? But when the factors that make Ghana, you know, go to the fund, one, shocks, commodity prices falling, and that means less revenue. Even weather. Remember Kosomo Dam going down periodically, and, you know, therefore it means no power output goes down, and because the water lake, luckily now we have thermal. When those factors come, you know, or a global financial crisis, like the peaks which I've mentioned, we reserve the right to come. But when we come, we are going to work with you on our own program to pay you, you know, to accelerate the program. So for Ireland, for example, they had a 3 or so year program. Within 1.5 years to 2 years, you know, they had met all the conditions and exited. So you can exit umpteen times. So it's a matter of just precaution, that's all, until we mature. And that's what the Asian tigers, you know, in the Latin American countries like Chile and the rest, you know, that's what they did. And more recently, the Eastern European countries that joined the EU. Right. So we can be bullish, but as I said, I know that the language is less bullish. The reality is, you know, and I would hope that would manage. So nobody is against, you know, winning ourselves of the IMF. But we are saying that as within both a new colonial context, if you like, you know, and the reality, until we build the sort of institutions and structures which I'm talking about, which will support exports and make our currency strong and whatever, then you have to, you know, take an insurance. After you're a member of the IMF, take an insurance for when you have to go. But have a plan, you know, for exiting quickly when you go.
And are the conditions right for an exit at this time? No, we had no option. That's elapsed, so we have to get out.
Well, no, the point is, the IMF terminology is programs are demand driven. So if one program ends and you don't go,
In fact, we could have remained silent over the whole issue. It's our right to tell the fund that we want to renew. I understand the politics of it, but I'm saying that you could have done it quietly. Right? You could have, yeah. And by the way, if the biggest test, I believe, would have been this, with all the resources, the additional resources which I'm talking about, right? Even in the week, remember, it was last week or early this week, or last week, that the IMF board approved the final review, right?
Yeah.
It came with money. The total facility to support Ghana was about 918, and it was being released after each review. So the biggest test is we are getting money from Tenfield, from Sankofa, right? So with this additional revenue, we should be managing better compared to 164 million, right? And say, yes, okay, you come and like an Article 4, look at our program, but we won't take the money. Because after all, the difference between doing an IMF program and not doing an IMF program is the money. Or the difference between a program which the IMF supports, called a program, and the alternative instrument like the policy support instrument which Kenya and others are doing, is that there's no money that comes with it. So they don't give you money to support your city. And IMF money, by the way, doesn't go to projects. It goes to support the city. But we've been taking that money since we did the current administration did the 5th and 6th review, and they did the 7th and 8th review. Both of them came with money. So there's even no demonstration to show that, or taking even half of the money and to show Ghanaians that, yes, we've come of age, and therefore we are not even taking. After all, it's a loan. So we could as well have, not taking all the money to demonstrate to Ghanaians that we are ripe. So you don't ask me whether I believe that we are ripe or not. I mean, the factors show that, So the very week in which we had done the bond, and the IMF had approved, and we had said that we were exiting, we were taking money from the fund.
So even from the evidence available alone, it shows that we're not right. We are not ready to pull out.
I'm saying if we, a categorical yes, no, I don't have all the numbers. Because, for example, I tell you that I see, for example, the overall balance, including the financial sector costs, being shown as footnote, as a memorandum item, instead of increasing the deficit. So it's very difficult. But on the one hand, if I see the flows that are coming in now, on a better trajectory, yes, the answer is we shouldn't have. We should probably be exiting. But if I see the depreciation, you see, a global economy that is going down, melting, possibility of, then we are saying that, and you see contractors' arrears being offset instead of being paid and all that, you're only postponing the problem. So I'm only saying that there is sufficient reason for caution.
Well,
and of course, remember what the IMF managing director said when she came here. One of the things she said was, exiting the IMF program should not be an excuse for going on a boring watch. She used the word binge. Yeah.
And we are bringing the interview to a close because the former minister has some engagements to attend to. But
I wish I had joined my colleagues. I like
but before you leave, by 2014, the current New Patriotic Party had already made a judgment on what they think about your direction in terms of your management of the economy. They already decided that you were incompetently managing the economy. Now, after seeing going into 3 years of their management, do you have a judgment of what you think they are doing?
Well, I just pass that judgment by saying that as far as I'm concerned, by the way, one of the things that has lagged behind, right, is we are not bringing, Sankofa gas and Tenfield gas, well enough under our gas to power strategy and the waterfall that would have first stabilized the power situation. We are back to doom so. Right, that would have stabilized the power and then provided, power for light industry first and then, large industry. That is the trajectory. We are not seeing any of this. So we are not seeing progress. I'm saying we have additional oil revenues coming in, 6 times more than
so you would have done better. You would have done far better with the structures you had put in place.
I believe so, because I just told you that even with a cap on our borrowing, right, and the restraints that we had to impose, and bringing the debt accumulation down, which is in the budget, we did more infrastructure. So what is there to show that we couldn't have performed better?
You're just talking about doom.
You know, it's quite easy to look at the headline figures, but I just told you that another of our successes is that there are strong African countries with more resources than Ghana, which are in recession and are struggling to get out. Some are just getting out of it. We never took the country into recession under those same circumstances.
But the last question before you go, you're just talking about doom, so because what I am seeing currently is that Greatco is requesting total load reduction of 300 megawatts from 800 hours to 18. That's between 800, that's 6. That's about, I think, to 6 p.m. They are asking for 300 megawatts. That is what the request they are making.
I think we should just be using the word load shedding.
Yes. Okay. So they're asking to shed load of 300 megawatts.
Yeah, I think we should just use it, because of that we'll run out of excuses.
Yeah, 300 megawatts. And at the time you were leaving power, you had indicated clearly that we had surplus power.
Yes, we were beginning to generate surplus power. P-word or I-word, competence, incompetence. They said they were going to perform better, so I think we can judge them on grounds of competence.
So you think the structures are in place for us to be having a more stable power sector?
We took the PRG. You remember the minister was talking about we going to the World Bank, right? We going to the World Bank to get a guarantee, to support that bond. It was for Sankofa Field, right? In fact, that guarantee, the second element of the guarantee is what the partial risk guarantee. So, if Sankofa has come on, continue with the job and just take the guarantee off. Take it off. Why keep it and criticize me? I mean, it's like saying that we should have borrowed at LIBOR plus 2% to do Airport Terminal 2. If it's possible to borrow at LIBOR plus 2%, why was the bond not done at LIBOR plus 2 equivalent of fixed, rates? The bond was just done, right? And by the way, if my 8% for doing Terminal 3, at the time we didn't have Terminal 3, it's too expensive. Now you have Terminal 3 generating more airport tax. So, heaven's sake, go and refinance. Why are you keeping the 8%? Just go and refinance.
They have no excuses, I guess.
No, I don't see the excuse.
Well, thank you very much for joining us this morning. It's been an interesting conversation. Former Finance Minister Seth Tekle speaking about the issues.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I wish you all the best. Yeah. And well, he's always he always makes himself available whenever we inform him that we want to have a conversation with him on the economy. He's a former finance minister. He left the office just about a little over 2 years ago, so still keeping a close eye on what is being done by his successor. Honorable Seth Tekle was our guest.
Let me compliment the Finance Committee of our members, the ranking. Former deputy.
You think they are good job? Okay. Well, so he's leaving us to attend to some other engagements. But before we start the discussion, let me just take you through what's on the front pages of our major the newspapers that we have available to us this morning. And I'll start with the Mirror newspaper, and it starts. And the banner headline is Ghana Women of the Year honors, and it comes with the pictures of Dr. Elsie Efa Kaufman, Miss Barbara Amesika Baita, and Nana Abba Anamwa. And also on the front page of the Mirror newspaper is prostitution at Kiosk Estate. Things play active role. So get a copy of that paper and read out those details. And on the Ghanaian Times, it has efforts to reduce road crashes. Install speed limiters. Government orders commercial vehicles. Come to the photograph of Mr. Ofoye Siama, who is Minister of Transport. Also on the front page of the Ghanaian Times, 3 ministries NADMO prepare for raining season. Students clash at athletics competition in Kumasi. Man granted bail for defiling 7-year-old boy. On the front page of the Daily Guide newspaper, Nam1 freed in Dubai. President Akufo-Addo hits 75. Winneba Varsity closure troubles government. And also cop beaters bailed. And also on the front page of the Daily Guide newspaper, man dies in Akpeteshi contest. And Daily Graphic finally has on its front page, gas attempt to evade tax gas depot closed. Attempt to evade tax, actually. And I think I should take that again. Attempt to evade tax. Gas depot closed. Platinum Impex mislabels consignments. And also on the front page of the Daily Graphic, over 70 Archbishop Potter Girls students hospitalized after mail. And also will continue to provide service for Cape Coast Hospital. We will continue to provide service for all. Cape Coast Hospital assures patients. And also on the front page of the Daily Graphic is a sports story. GFA special competition set to kick off. Kotoko face tough Ediana test. So those are on the front page of the newspapers this morning. Once again, if you just join us, you're welcome to the Mother of All talk shows, Alhaji and Alhaji. We're live on a number of affiliates across the country. We're live on Multi TV channel 13. If you're on Facebook, we are live through PAB MCGH. PAB MCGH. PAB spelled PAB. We have hyphen MC and Facebook and GH separately. So PAB MCGH. You can watch the whole discussion on Facebook if you join us through that platform. And we are on tunein.com on the internet wherever you are. And the discussion today is centering around, like I said, the economy first. We are talking about the bipartisan committee to look at issues regarding why the cedi is on a free fall. The former finance minister says it still does not understand what the cedi is falling. In fact, they should be doing far better. And then secondly, we'll be talking about the Electoral Commission's announcement of a possible compilation of a new voters register for election 2020, and we'll be clearly analyzing the attempt to perhaps outsmart the political parties, because that was included in a communique issued after an IPAC meeting. And then if we still have time, we'll have optional comments. We'll speak specifically to the passage of the right to information bill into law, and that will take effect from 2020. And like I announced earlier, joining me for today's discussion will be Mr. Kwesi Prajina, Managing Editor of the Inside newspaper, Comrade Ibrahim Murtala Mohammed, who is a former Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry and former Member of Parliament for Nanton constituency, Professor Nino Idowona, Senior Lecturer at the University of Ghana, Legon, and Honorable Rekit Kweku Hagan, Member of Parliament for Cape Coast South and former Deputy Minister of Finance. Once again, my name is Sana Novo, show is produced by Patrick Asford Buidu. Now let's start off the discussion, and let's start with Comrade Ibrahim Murtala Mohammed. Good morning.
Good morning.
We're starting on our very first topic having to do with the proposal. Not the proposal, in fact, the finance minister says that is his approach. He has a directive from the president to look into why the cedi is depreciating, and he's decided to go with a bipartisan committee. He's also been announcing some measures they are putting in place to deal with the economy post-IMF. Well, good morning.
Good morning. Let me say good morning to your cherished listeners and, of course, viewers on PAP MCGH. And my brother, it's been a long time. Richard and I have worked at the Ministry of Trade as deputy ministers. So I wonder why sometimes when you are doing introduction, you limit his capacity as a former deputy minister for finance. Actually, I worked with him, a wonderful person, and we had an outstanding working relationship. It's been long that we haven't had this opportunity to sit. And I tell our friends in the MPP that at least we left a mark at the Ministry of Trade as two deputies and our minister, who was in the person of Dr. Spio Gabra. Unfortunately, these people are in a complete mess, and same can be said of all the ministries that the NDC appointed ministers and deputy ministers to manage. Let me also use the opportunity to wish the people of Tamale, and to extend my greetings and felicitations to them, and permit me also to indeed wish the people of Nanton the funeral or final funeral rites of the Nanton now was performed. Unfortunately, I couldn't attend for condition of health. I wasn't feeling that fine. But whatever the case is, I was with them in spirit, and I certainly would, go visit and greet the regent once I get to Tamale. And hopefully maybe by the time I get there would have been a new, Nantona installed. I mean, regardless the fact that I'm no longer contesting Nanton constituency, inshallah, I'm now contesting Tamale Central. I still have some links with them. I can't abandon them. I still visit. I still assist people in the constituency, particularly those who indeed are in need that I can assist. I would also want to premise this, because I know that the people of Tamale actually listen to this program keenly and religiously. As a result of the incompetent management of our educational system, where we now have a traffic light educational shift. You have red, greens, and others, and the fact that a lot of the young people who are in senior secondary schools, particularly as far as I'm concerned, in most of the deprived schools, are struggling because there's a limited time that they spend in school, that they are not able to finish syllabuses. I have organized free extra classes actually in Tamale, and the free extra classes are ongoing. I know that there have been a lot of information that is out there. You have students not less than 100, sometimes more than that, attending such schools. And if you permit me, I can make the statement without paying anything to Radio Gold. The classes are taking place in the Sakasaka GSS. Interestingly, senior comrade Kwesi Pratt happened to be, I guess, a past student of that school. The classes is going on in Sakasaka GSS. I also have another classes that is going on in the Kulikulu school, my alma mater, and another one that is going on in Zugbeli GSS. I mean, these are free extra classes that I have organized, at least with the little resources I have and the assistance from friends and those who believe in the project I have to assist these people. The interesting thing is that it's not being participated by only NDC, students or students whose parents are in NDC. Even MPP are participating in it. So I just want to use this opportunity to say that it is not only limited to people who, quote and unquote, have relations with NDC or whose parents have relations with NDC. And it is refreshing that the information I get is that you have all kids or young boys and young girls who are in the senior secondary schools who are participating. That is the only way we can help this, our brothers and sisters. And the quality of teachers there is just tremendous. Permit me also to just bring to fore an information I got just yesterday about what is happening in Kolebu, and it's very important. And I'm bringing this to fore before I venture into the topic, because I experienced similar incidents at the airport. I traveled from Tamale, then I got to the airport. My wife actually came to pick me. I traveled light. I just had a handbag. I came out, when you come out of the arrival, there's a bus stop. I just stood there. My wife drove in. I opened in, and then the car was clamped. And I was wondering why. And they said, no, even if you have to pick someone, you have to go and park at the parking lot and pay. So you can't even drive and stand and someone just sits in. I never had a bag that I needed to put in a boot or somewhere, because they have ceded that responsibility to a private company, and that private company is making those demands. So you can't even stop over and pick anybody at the airport. I am yet to find out any country in the world that such is going on, because a private company owned by someone who is an MPP apparatchik, and because they want to make money for their people, they subject people to these unacceptable conditions. It discourages investors, it discourages tourists, it discourages virtually everybody. And I think that we stand alone even in the sub-region for having been engaged in such act. Tying it with what is happening at Kolebu, if you go to Kolebu, is it Kolebu Polyclinic? Kolebu, they are now bringing in a private security company to take over the responsibility of security at Kolebu, and they have started from departments within Kolebu. And I think for me it's extremely worrying. The suspicion of the person who gave me this information is that they are this same Delta force and invisible forces they are bringing under the yoke of a private security company to engage in such. Now the question I asked the gentleman was, on what basis are they doing that? And then what happens to those security men who are there? And they said, look, Kolebu is understaffed in terms of security. Now they have people who are there. They are now getting rid of these people and bringing in their own people. And the fear is that those who were already employed, some of whom have worked with Kolebu for several years, may be asked to go home. And I think that this is extremely worrying. You remember sometimes last year, we raised an issue about what Kolebu also did in the nursing training college, that over 7,000 people, applied for admission. They were going to take less than 800. I'm told they took like 850 or 900. Yet they invited all the over 7,000 to come for interview. And each and every one of them paid 100 Ghana cedis without even a receipt being given. This is immoral. This is unethical. You know that you are not going to take up to that 7,000. You invited all the over 7,000 who bought forms and applied for the admission. You invited them for interview, and then you asked them to pay 100 Ghana cedis each. So the invitation for the interview was not to seed the best qualified students for admission. The motive was to get this 100 Ghana cedis from each of these already desperate young people seeking for admission into the nursing training colleges. And it happened across the country because the Minister of Health indeed had indicated to these institutions that they did not have enough resources for them. So they should generate money internally to be able to run the affairs of their ministry. So I think that this is an issue that we must not let go. The security must not be, torpedoed. There are already people who were existing in that company. They sent me even videos of interviews of some of the gentlemen working under the yoke of this MPP created company that has created opportunity for Delta forces and invisible forces to be recruited. That said, I think that we discussed this issue last year. I'm wondering, how many times are we going to sit here to talk about the depreciation of the cedi? Now, the reason why I guess this has become a very important topic has to do with the extension of invitation by the Minister of Finance, and for that matter, this government, to other political parties to participate in an issue that is of tremendous concern to all of us. But let me state clearly that the NDC is never pleased with the depreciation of our local currency. And I say this because a sister radio station interviewed me yesterday, and the journalist indeed premised his question or the discussion in such a preposterous portion that the NDC must be happy that the cedi is, losing its value. And I said, no, the NDC are also citizens of this country. The only solace, or if you like, joy that the NDC may take from this will be the exposure of the incompetence and the ingratitude of this government, and the fact that they blamed the challenges that the cedi was going through on so-called incompetence of the NDC. And for me, God being so good exposed them the more. So, and I am happy that I heard the former deputy minister for finance and a ranking member of the finance committee in parliament, my good friend Honorable Atuforsen, who had indicated the preparedness and the willingness of the NDC as a minority to participate in that. Because you see, the difference between the NDC and the MPP is that whereas we can help it, they cannot. There was a similar conference that was being held. It was not just about the depreciation of the cedi. It was about the entire gamut of our economic structure. Political parties were invited, civil society. The MPP refused to participate in it. They refused to participate. So we must show a class. When they go low, we should go high. And I think that this is the clearest demonstration. And my sincere appeal to the Ghanaian people is that this, for me, is one of the reasons why the NDC must be chosen, above the MPP in terms of who is given the mandate, the responsibility to govern this country. There is no denying the fact that the ship is going, through pieces in this country. The ship of not just the economy, the ship of the social fabric of this country, the security, the entirety of our governance structure is going to pieces. No plan, no method, no vision. And there is a sharp difference between, propaganda and actuals. There is a sharp difference between wanting to be elected to rule a country and the opportunity to rule a country. And for me, that is what is glaring, to the people of this country today. My sincere appeal to the NDC is that we should put on our bravest face, that we have an elections to win, and we will not win the elections on a silver platter. We need to work for the elections. We need to put behind us our differences. Of course, we certainly must disagree to agree. We need to understand that the elections we are getting into is not just about winning the elections for President Mahama, who is the flag bearer of the NDC, or winning the elections for NDC. It is about the survival of this country. It's about liberating this country from both socioeconomic and political servitude that we have been subjected to by people who care less about the interests of the larger masses of this country. The only people the president and his, gang of family members who have been appointed care about is about their interests. And it is not for nothing that people are saying that 4 people rule this country. It's the president, his brother Bonti, the minister of finance, and Gabi Ochirdaku, that these people rule this country. Because clearly, in all these narratives and discussions, you hear not even the contribution of very important people in the MPP stock who have all raised the red lines and says that this is not the way to go, even if you want to restructure the economy. So yes, the NDC would participate in it. But once again, if I can borrow, or I certainly would have to give credit to my senior brother, Dr. Mahmoud Baumia, that when the fundamentals of your economy are weak, the exchange rate will expose you. The question is the MPP prepared in the quest of having this bipartisan discussion to indeed take a second look at the fundamentals of our economy? Are they prepared to listen to the solutions or possible solutions that NDC and other political parties will prefer? Are they willing to accept the criticisms that are done genuinely on the basis of the challenges that our economy, is facing today? If the response of the MPP to this few questions are yes, then I think that there will be some hope ahead. But I shudder to think that the MPP will do that. I guess that they are looking for an opportunity to more or less blame the incompetence, the ineptitude nature by which this country is governed, and for which reason the city is going through challenges on not just the MPP, but on the entire gamut of the economy. And let's get something very clear. Yesterday, I read on social media, the one Dr. Owusu something, who I've forgotten that, Owusu Achampon something, I've forgotten the other name, who is the technical advisor to the vice president, who blamed the depreciation of the city on churches. The question I ask is that, were those churches existing under the NDC? And if those churches were existing under the NDC, if the NDC had blamed the depreciation of the city, that we experience on the churches, perhaps the Christian Council, the Pentecostal Union, the other religious bodies would have been moralizing the discourse in attacking the integrity of the NDC for blaming the depreciation of the city on the churches. MPP has done that. There is a different narrative altogether. All of them are in a complete state of incommunicado. As a matter of fact, they haven't even heard. They haven't even read. They haven't even listened to the interview which was granted on radio. Now, again, why would you be thinking that the city is losing its value and you think that you need bipartisan, discussion or conference to solve it? The problems are there. You don't need rocket science. You don't need Archimedes or Plato or Cicero to come and give you a moral lecture or a logical reasons why the city is at where it is. This country is a hugely import-dependent country. Now, it is strange that at the time when Dr. Baumia was doing politics with the value of our currency, and as a deputy minister, I remember pointing out to them that it is suicidal to do politics with the currency of your country when you are hugely import-dependent. It's a simple law of demand and supply. We don't produce dollars or other foreign currencies. We produce cedis in this country. We need to get the dollars or the other foreign currencies, the pound, the CFA francs, the euro, to be able to transact international business. Now, if I'm going to buy something from Togo, I can't go to Togo with the cedi to buy that thing in Togo. I'll go with the CFA francs, or perhaps I can go with the dollar, which would then also be exchanged. Now, when you do that, you need to have that to be able to transact that business. Now, if you are able to produce the kinds of things you would have gone to Nigeria, you would have gone to America or Britain to buy, if you are able to produce those things, then that few dollars and other foreign currencies in circulation, which you would have indeed galvanized to be able to go to purchase those things, you'll not be able to do them. That is one. Two, if we have identified that our inability to show up the value of our currency has to do with our huge dependence on other countries for basic commodities. What measures have we put in place as successive governments to be able to overcome them? I wouldn't be in the position to talk about what the MPP measures are, but clearly I wasn't alive when Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah was a president of this country. But I do know that what he inherited and the measures he put in place to establish factories across the country was one of the best ways by which we could produce the basic commodities that we needed in this country. What happened to those factories? When the criminals overthrew Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah in 1966, the first step they took was to close down these industries across the country, with the simple, flimsiest, and insensitive reason that those industries had communist linked. They closed them down because I can't fathom why any sensible government would engage in what they engage in. They did that. But let me even forget of what Nkrumah did in the 1960s and come to the 4th Republican Constitution and narrow it to the immediate NDC's administration. President Mahama haven't realized that we were spending so much money in the importation of rice in this country. Successive government from Prof. Mills, I remember, put in measures to ensure how we could boost the production of local rice and reduce the importation of foreign rice. The questions and the debate at that time was that the quality of the local rice produced in this country was not the best, and for which reason people were unwilling, because you buy rice, you eat the rice, and then you are breaking what? Pebbles. Now, former President Rawlings came with the Aveima Rice Project. This was not just to produce rice to this country, but it had the potential of creating a lot of jobs for the people of this country. We lost elections in 2000. The MPP under Kufuor came. They were not interested in ensuring that state monies and resources had been expended in providing up that particular facility. They were skunking for information to jail people. And they succeeded in doing that with under the yoke of a law, a nebulous law that says causing financial loss to the state. Now, what happened to the Aveima Rice Project? For the 8 years the MPP was in office, it was abandoned. When NDC won elections, Prof. Mills took steps to revive the Aveima Rice Project. And this had an effect in 2014-2015 fiscal year, when we had an increase in the production of local rice by 60%. And a reduction in the importation of foreign rice by 40%. Because the quality of the rice that was produced by that and many other new companies that were given the opportunity to invest in this country, we succeeded in doing that. Of course, we didn't build the capacity to produce the needed rice quantity that we expected to have in this country. But at least there was a reduction. Regardless of all these measures that were put in place, by 2016, and as recent as to the 7th of January 2017, we are spending close to $500 million in the importation of rice and poultry products in this country. Less than barely 2 years under this government, we are spending over $1 billion in the importation of rice and poultry products in this country. Over $1 billion. Why? The measures that were put in place at the Ministry of Trade under the NDC to ensure that we discourage the importation of such foreign rice into this country, and the measures put in place by the Ministry of Agric, the Ministry of Finance, and other ministries to ensure that we boost the production of rice, local rice production in this country. What has happened to them? They have all been thrown to the dogs because a lot of these rice importers financed the MPP campaign. So when they came, all these measures that yielded some positive results, let's abandon them. Now what happened? We are now spending over $1 billion. Could you imagine we being saving $500 million and how that $500 million could have done to the value of our cedi in terms of its relation with other foreign currencies? Could you imagine the jobs that would have been created as a result of we avoiding spending the extra $500 million in the importation of this rice product? We went in for the Commander Sugar Factory. I won't belabor that issue. I explained here time and again, and I'm happy that my brother is here. He is from Central Region. He was deeply involved, myself and my minister, who was also from Central Region, in the establishment of that factory. A factory that has the potential of creating jobs, generating energy for the areas. What happened? They opposed it by holding a press conference because they stated that and felt that the people of Central Region didn't deserve the sugar factory. How come that the factory was built? The other tranche of the loan, which was approved by Parliament, I guess in October 2016, having approved this loan, this government refused to access that. Of course, the sugar that was going to be produced by the Commander Sugar Factory was not going to be enough to take care of our sugar needs in this country. But at least it could have even served the need of our pharmaceutical companies in this country, who were given direct financial assistance. Monies were given to them to boost production so they could produce enough to feed the domestic market and at least the sub-region. One other very important point that many people haven't even taken note. By the time we left office, intra-trade within the sub-region, Ghana at that time had the highest. In fact, it was increased to almost 36%. Now, what it means is that we're doing very well in terms of our trade relations with our neighbors or within the West Africa sub-region. Of course, the continental intra-trade among African countries moves around 11, 12, 13, 14%, which is extremely discouraging. But the fact that we're doing well, in terms of our trade relations with our neighbors, for me, was something that was hugely positive. What has happened to it? It has actually come down. Now, you have a government that says that they made a balance of trade surplus. Why won't you make a balance of trade surplus when you are not importing and when you are not exporting? Now, the fact that you enjoyed a balance of trade surplus doesn't mean that the economy is doing well. What it simply means is that very essential commodities, factors of production or input or raw material resources that are needed by domestic industries, and because of the huge taxes that are imposed on importation, they are not able to bring in those things. Now, even if export stands still, and import is reducing drastically, then you have the chance of enjoying international, net trade relations or trade, what's the name? International trade surplus. You have the chance of doing that. But the consequences of it is that it is affecting local industries, it is affecting job creation, it is affecting even specialization and industrialization. And that is why we are where we are. Look, the only way these things can be done, it doesn't matter the number of conferences and bipartisan, if you like, conferences that are being called by this government. The most important thing is to take a second look at the fundamentals of our economy. The fundamentals are not only weak under this super corrupt and super incompetent government. The fundamentals are in tatters. The fundamentals, the fragment of the fundamentals of our economy are scattered everywhere, and it doesn't need anybody to look at it. So we may have such bipartisan conferences, we may have such lofty discussions and ideas put aside. If we do not take measures to ensure that we reduce our dependence on other countries in terms of the basic commodities that we produce, then we'll come to naught. Okay. And the only way and that the NPP can come back to where at least the NDC handed over to them is to ensure that they go back to the measures that were put in place by the NDC to ensure we boost rice production and ensure that the Commander Sugar Factory, which was actually going to be in running by now, that at least we would have reduced the quantity, the amount of money we spend importing sugar. I remember at the time the Commander Sugar Factory was being test run, we were spending close to $80 million importing sugar into this country. Do you know how much you spend now? Over $300 million under this government. Now you have Abusu Okan's spare parts dealers, who, by the way, contributed 200,000 Ghana cedis towards the MPP's campaign. I'm told they are demanding from the MPP that they should return their monies to them, because it is very clear that we can no longer have a respite. And the only way that we can solve this, and I have a sincere appeal to the Ghanaian people, is to ensure that we boot this government out. They don't have any plan, they don't have any vision, and it is very clear to everybody that where we are heading, there can't be any solution except booting them out of power, so that proper people can come and manage this country. And have no doubt in mind that the MPP and Nanado has nothing left in them to manage this country. I pray that the CD indeed gains its value, but I shudder to think that it may not be able to do that. Even the temporal measure by injecting money, which Mr. Mpienim, who is one of the founding fathers of the MPP, said that it is the most useless, measure that is put in place. When we did that and we had a respite, of the CD gaining some value, they went to town once again. Today, it is moving around 5.3 something again. Now, what is the guarantee that even if we inject $10 billion into the economy, we'll still get back to where we are?
Okay. Thank you very much, comrade. So he has kicked off the discussion on the economy. But before I go to Honorable Ricky Sagan, a couple of messages on our Facebook page. Alex Boafo says most Ghanaians know for a fact that this government is bad and is not good for Ghanaians. Abigail Tego says, good morning, Senator. There should be laws governing repatriation of more than 50% of funds by foreign companies. Malon Jackson says, but Well, this is not so clear. He said, but we are competent people who tell Ghanaians that they can fix it if given the nod. Now they have been given the nod, they should fix it. Or if they can't, they should step down and let Mahama continue his good work for Ghanaians. I must also tell you that I have heavily edited your message. This one says, well, there are complaints about a link on More TTV. I hope our technical people are listening. I'll get them to do some checks on it for you. And also, Obayin Fisi says, MPP just used their award 3 months to win power. 2020 is just around the corner. My problem is Ghanaians like sweet, deceitful lies and hate the truth. And Kumbati Solomon says, the economy is broke. MPP fix it and stop the talking. Obayin fix it against sense. Baumia is good at textbook, but well, poor at the practical aspect. We don't use book knowledge to manage the economy. When the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you. So, Honorable.
Yeah.
You're on. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Yeah, thank you very much, my brother. It's been a while, and I've been absent, from your stations and other places because I was a bit indisposed. But now, by His grace, I'm fine. Greetings to my brother Kwesi. I haven't seen him for a long time. And Mutala, my colleague that we've done battles together, in the past. My brother has said quite a lot of interesting things, and then it's also because we both had the opportunity to participate in some of the things that we were doing actually in terms of long-term to strengthen the economy and also restore the value of the city. Now, the interesting thing, and I kind of like this idea that when they form a bipartisan committee, we should participate. Just as we, more or less is like something like a mini cinch. So as we were doing it at a time where we thought that we needed to have discussion, with a larger Ghanaian community who have the expertise to be able to sort of help us forge ahead in resolving some of the problems that we had at the time, which we still, have. One of the issues was actually to do with the currency. Century was not just, the exchange rate and everything is linked to the whole economy, because actually an exchange rate is a macroeconomic indicator. I find it interesting when the government says that the economic indicators are good. I think they forget that the exchange rate is also a macroeconomic indicator, and that if that is bad, the macroeconomics cannot actually be good. Now, as an economist, what actually surprises me is that when the minister came to the House to actually, read his presentation as to what is happening, and ended up by saying that the president has actually asked him to put together a bipartisan committee to investigate what the structural causes are. I thought, if this guy has anything left, he would have resigned. The finance minister is the principal economic and finance advisor to the president of the republic. Now, if the president of the republic has now become the the principal advisor to the finance minister, then I wonder who the finance minister is. The answers, the president is frustrated, and rightly so. And that is why he's basically asked them to do what they have to do, because he wants to solve the problem, I believe and I hope. Now, he couldn't get an answer for this depreciation mess from the vice president who heads the economic management team. He couldn't get an answer from the senior minister who is responsible for the economy. And he couldn't get an answer from the finance minister who is supposed to be advising the president on why we are in the mess that we are in. So, for me, even the starting point that we are going to have a bipartisan committee, I don't even think any of the principal economic advisors in the MPP should actually participate, because they basically have nothing to offer. If they do, they would have suggested something. I mean, they haven't got a clue. The president is now asking the finance minister. This is really unheard of. Any other country in the world, the finance minister will not even get to parliament. He would have resigned on his way to parliament, because it's a demonstration of lack of confidence by His Excellency the President in his finance minister. And then you come to parliament and actually, you know, back it with some scriptures that you are forming a bipartisan, and he's not even ashamed of it. That is where we have actually, you know, descended. Now, you know, NDC, we want the country to do well, so we are ready to help if they ask us for help. I mean, if your friend is shouting for help and you don't help them, I mean, they are asking for it. This is the party with the men, and I believe the women as well. And now all these people all of a sudden are found wanted, and they are looking for a bipartisan way to be able to resolve, you know, this currency crisis. Now, the issue with the currency is actually far more interesting thing. You see, the reason I believe that these guys don't actually know what they are doing, one of them is what I've given you. He doesn't know. His president has asked him to investigate. The second thing is the gentleman that my brother mentioned his name, some senior technical advisor. I mean, the vice president, who's an economist, has also quite a number of economic advisors, you know, around him. Yet they cannot find a solution to this problem. Now, the gentleman, I believe he said what he said. That they have just done some research. This is a research. It's not something that he was saying out of his head, and realized that on Mondays and Tuesdays, the depreciation of the currency, there's actually a marginal depreciation of the currency, and they have traced that back to churches, that the offertories and the tithes that they pay on Sunday contribute to the marginal depreciation on Monday and Tuesday. So after church service on Monday and on Sunday, all the pastors in this country, I believe, head to the nearest bureaus with the tithes to change the money, and basically that creates the problem that he's talking about. Now, what is interesting even is that when he was pushed to, supposing he has identified part of the problem, supposing the churches are part of the problem, when they ask him that, so what is your government doing about it in solving the problem? You know what he said, and I will read it. I just wrote it down here. I nearly fell off my chair when I looked at it. Very, very interesting advisor.
Advisor to the
technical advisor. Yeah, that's his title, a technical advisor. I think it's called Frimpon or something. Huh? I noted his name simply because of what he was talking about, because I wanted to find out more about who he is. Now, this is what he said. The church offertory things which I've talked about contribute to the depreciation of the city. So basically, it's looking like, I mean, when you go to the malam and it doesn't work, try the software. When you go to the software, it doesn't work, try the malam. Basically, try and error. So they asked him what does he think, you know, the government is going to do as a solution. And he said, his actual words, unbelievable, that if he's optimistic. I just want to read his actual words. He's optimistic that the measures that the government has rolled out to strengthen the city against the dollar will yield positive result. So he identified the problem of churches. He doesn't even say anything about what they are going to do with the churches. But he believes that what has already been rolled out, which is not working, will eventually yield a result. So it's either they don't understand the problem, or they don't understand the problem, they don't know the solution. Because if churches are, whatever they have done so far, rolled out so far, has nothing to arrest the situation of what he is talking about with the churches. So that obviously tells you that they basically don't have a clue of what they are talking about. Now, let me expand this whole thing, because I think it's about time we need to find a solution to this city crisis that seems to be happening. It's a cyclical thing, periodic. It goes on every now and then. The other thing that they mentioned, that before I come to that, is that he said the president, the principal economic advisor to the finance minister, says that they should investigate the structural causes. So basically, in their limited mind, the causes of what is happening to the depreciation is as a result of just structural causes. It goes beyond structural causes. It tells you clearly that they don't have a grip of the problem to be able to address it. And therefore, if they are limited to only structural, then that is going to be a problem. Now, let me give you a picture. And some of these things, we were doing something about it when we were in government. Just to give you a list of what I perceive to be the causes of the city's depreciation, of which the structural causes they are talking about is one of. Now, first of all, and my brother did mention of, in Nkrumah and when we, started, we have a historic problem with revaluation and redenomination, or what we did in the past in terms of revaluing the city and then also doing redenomination of the city. Now, the city actually come into, without boring with too much history, we started using city in 1965 when Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah was president. That is when we moved from the British pound, or what they call the Ghana pounds, shillings and pence, into the Ghana cedi. At that time, and older people will know this, at that time, the one cedi, what became known as one cedi, was actually equivalent to what is called 8 shillings, 4 pence. That is how they set it. Okay? Now, because of the structures that Nkrumah did put in place in terms of factories and all that, we were able to sustain the value of the money, because they changed the pegging from the Ghana's money pegged to the pound, and rather pegged it. That is when we started pegging against the dollar. Now, in 1967, when actually Nkrumah was overthrown, after the CPP was overthrown, the cedi was devaluated again. There was a devaluation where a new cedi was created out of the old cedi, and that new cedi was one cedi of the old. One cedi, 20 pesos of the old, was equivalent to one cedi of the new cedi. That is where things started going wrong. That came to be known as the cedi, and it started actually depreciating. Okay, now we had this devaluation. There's a difference between devaluing your currency and your currency's performance against major currencies. Because if you take 120 of the old cedi and make it one new cedi, depending on what you've pegged the one new cedi to the dollar at, is what is going to determine your exchange rate and what happens to it. If it's not done properly, and you have overvalued your currency, and you subject yourself to the market, in that case the market determines the value of your cedi, then the cedi will find its own level. It's like water. it will find its own level. So if the cedi is overvalued, if you have artificially, and this is not going too much with history, so I'm going to jump the history, because in 1979 a lot of things happened. Various things were done. New cedi again was created from the old one, where we had 30% kind of a discount. So if you have 5,000 cedis of the old, you get like 3,500 and so on and so forth. In the 80s and 90s, there were various devaluation exercises and things done. One of the interesting things that we did was that our currency was moving out of, various things, auction system, fixed system, whole lot of things. And then eventually we went to the floating, where eventually we brought the black market together with the mainstream, if you like, to create the bureaus that came in the 80s. Now, just to jump to July of 2007, this is where the actual 2007, when we did a redenomination done by our vice president, who was then a deputy governor at the central bank. I think he was given that responsibility. What they said at the time was that obviously the currency had become too bulky, a bit inconvenience to carry loads of it. It's even a hazard to do that. So what they were going to do was to try and redenominate the money so that we use smaller currencies, if you like. So that's when the 10,000 of Ghana cedis, 4 zeros was knocked off, and it became 1 cedi. The mistake they did at the time, and that has been part of the problem we are having today, was that if it is just about the bulkiness of the money or the inconvenience of it, you didn't have to do that kind of redenomination. You could just issue bigger notes to address that problem. If it's 10,000 or issue 10,000, 50,000 or whatever notes you want. But to knock 4 zeros off. So this is what I'm telling you. We do a devaluation of our currency, but how we peg it against international currencies or major currencies is where the problem is. So when we did that, all of a sudden, 1 Ghana cedi became equivalent to 1 United States dollar. This is what happened in 2007 when this was done. So basically, all of a sudden, we become a bit disillusioned, false impression that our cedi is now as powerful as the almighty US dollars. People were doing all sorts of, trades and all sorts of things. So a bit of irresponsibility, or people became a bit irresponsible as far as the money is concerned, and they thought the dollar was that. But we had actually, even though we had devalued in terms of old currency to new, we have overvalued against the major currency like US dollars, which we peg against. So eventually, because we were operating in a market economy and operating a floating rate that is determined by the money, demand and supply will let your currency find its own level. So the demand and supply over a period of time is telling us that our currency, which was done in 2007, was actually overvalued, and that the dollar and the cedi, or the cedi, is still finding its level, and it hasn't found it yet. That is a fundamental problem we need to find a way to address, so that going forward, if we want to operate in the same space of floating or whatever, then we are not going to have the issue of the dollar being, because if you artificially prop up a currency to strengthen it, your exchange rate will expose you. Because what you have done is you are keeping the currency where it doesn't belong. This happened to the United Kingdom. When they used to be, before the euro came in, there was a system called the exchange rate mechanism system, where all European countries peg their currency against each other within a band. So your currency can, appreciate or depreciate within a certain band. When your currency goes out of that band, which means that there are problems with your fundamentals, you have to address it for you to be able to stay in the exchange rate mechanism, because that was a precursor to a single currency. Now, British people, their problem was not that the economy was not solid, but there were other speculative activities. This is what we need to understand about the currency. It's not just about your economy being strong or whatever, which is important, because in the long run, that is what will actually save your currency. What actually happened to Britain then was that they decided to support the pound for the pound to be able to stay in the exchange rate mechanism. So they were using central bank money, pumping into the market as the value of the pound is going down to sustain it. Basically by buying out pound out of the system and putting, other currencies in there. Then eventually what happened is that one day, one man who is a speculative investor called one George Soros, which many people have heard their name, wiped the British government or the British Central Bank out of the market in one day, which came to be known as Black Wednesday. If really we have speculators in this country, Ghana's reserve is just hovering around $5 billion. And if we are going to be supporting our currency with about $1 billion each time things go wrong, if serious people, and I'm not suggesting this to anyone, but if serious speculators and investors sit down properly, they can wipe Ghana's economy out of, the park in just a day, because you only have 5 billion. Even if you decide that you will defend your currency with about 2 or 3 billion of that, you just need somebody who can marshal that money to be able to sit down and wipe or mop up any dollars you put in the system. The central bank has failed because the central bank does not understand the economy that it is supposed to be policing. The Ministry of Finance has failed because on the fiscal side, they don't have a clue as to the strategies to use in addressing the city situation. The situation of the city is a short-term, medium-term, and long-term. If you just focus on the long-term, it's going to take you about 5 to 10 years to be able to resolve this problem we talk about as structural causes. What are structural causes? Ghana's economy is an import-dependent economy. We import, we all know this saying, we import more than basically we export. Because basically everything we consume has to come from somewhere, and you need dollars and stuff too. If we're going to do a restructuring of the economy, which is what the structure adjustment suggested, which the NDC government was doing, if you hear Minister Setepe is talking, all the time he's talking about restructuring of the economy. That is what he meant. Because we needed to restructure the economy, move our dependence on imports, do more export, look at things we can add value to, and do them. It's not done by, when Nkrumah was building factories, he chose the factories carefully. If you look at Commodore Sugar Factory, is not a new factory. It was there before and we came to refurbish it. What we were doing was to try and refurbish all the old companies before you add new one. This kind of thing of one district, one factory, really is not the solution, the long-term solution to address this problem. I mean, what are we going to do? Produce better cars than Korea or Germany if we are to set up a car manufacturing plant? And how long is that going to take? Look at how long it's taking Kantanka, they may be able to do it. But the kind of efficiencies you need to be able to produce a car like BMW or even V8, which some of the Kantanka models are competing with, they are not in the next 2 years going to make a better car than the V8 for them to be able to export and sell. So we need to be adding value to things that we are good at. The cocoa and things we're doing, we move to processing the cocoa beans instead of sending the raw seed, so we can add more value to it and also improve the shelf life of it. Now, what the problem, and I've given you the one which is the historic problem. The second problem is a cyclical problem. Cyclical problem means that something that occurs pretty much all the time. It's a cycle. If you look at the city, I was trying to plot a graph of the city, where I could get data from actually 1965 to date. You have to adjust for a lot of things, and in some places the data was not there. You will realize that the story has always been the same. And the cyclical issues that we are talking about here, basically the reoccurring of the depreciation, is as a result of a demand and supply. And my brother rightly said, we don't supply dollars. We don't produce dollars here. So you cannot focus on the supply side of dollars. Your focus in fixing your economy should be mainly on the demand side. That is where you can do something. What you can't do anything about it, you leave it, because if America produces dollars, if their dollar is going in the direction they don't like, they can get Fed to put in the dollars, even though they are independent, because they look after each other. Now, if we don't do that and we don't understand what the demand issues are and address them, and rather use our small reserves that we have, which should be a buffer for us to cover import covers and all that, we use that to address the cyclical problem of the currency, which is going to happen every year. Then this idea of Ghana beyond aid will never happen, because every time we will need some money to be able to cushion the city. That is why we do Eurobonds. That is why we do syndicated loan. But you see, all these things, Eurobond can never help your currency. Before we were on the IMF, obviously the IMF money that we were getting was supposed to go straight to help the currency. That we have finished the program. Thank God for that. Now, the issue of the Eurobond is to sit down and say that you are going to manage your cyclical problem with Eurobond. It's really a huge risk. Why is it a risk? Before you go to the Eurobond market to borrow money, you actually have to go to Parliament to tell Parliament what you are going to use the money when you get it to do. And basically, the money was supposed to, support budgetary support and also liability management in terms of refinancing your debt and all that stuff. So as soon as you do the Eurobond, and I've been fortunate to be part of, past Eurobond, as soon as you do the Eurobond and you close the deal in New York, before the money gets into the Bank of Ghana account in Accra, the money has already been spent, because there is an allocation for that money already. So the money comes, yes, in dollars, because the investors, they bring the dollars and they buy our bonds in cedis, so they have to sell the dollars to buy it. So you put some dollars in the market, yes, sure. But what happens then is that the dollars that you are putting in the market is not going to stay there for long, because it's supposed to support budget allocation. It is supposed to do refinance debt. Some of these debt you are refinancing actually belongs to foreigners, whom you will give them. You change the cedi, you get the dollars, you change it to cedis, you pay them in refinancing if they don't want to roll over and invest again. The moment you give them the cedis, the very dollars you have put in the market to strengthen the dollar so that the demand on the dollar will go down and the price will go down. This is simple basic economics. That when the demand of something is high, the price will also be going out. So if there are less dollars in the economy, because at the moment, neither the government nor the central bank actually understand how much dollars we have in our economy at any time. So it's like you have a bucket which is 3/4 empty and you want to fill it. And you go to Baumia's Vice President Baumia's textbook economics, and the textbook economics tells him that if you are short of dollars in the system, use your reserve in the central bank to buy cedis from the market, because it's two-way thing. When you have a shortage of the dollars in the system, it means you have excess cedis in the system. So the dollar price strengthens, and that is the appreciation of the dollar, and the depreciation of the cedi as a result of the market having more cedis than it needs. So the central bank brings in cedis, brings in dollars to mop up cedis from the economy by increasing the dollars in the system, so that the price of the dollar will fall. Because when dollar goes up and the demand of the dollar goes down, the price will fall. And by taking cedis out of the system, you have reduced the cedis in the economy, which will make the value of the cedi go up. That's a basic 101 economics. Now, what this government doesn't understand is that they have no idea what is happening to the buckets of water that they have, which is 3/4 empty. They are filling a leaking bucket. Therefore, it doesn't matter how much water you put in that bucket. Once the bucket is leaking, it will never be full. So it doesn't matter. You can do all the Eurobond you want in this world. You can do all the syndicated world you want in this world. Once you come and put it in the economy, the system will absorb the money, and you need to bring more. So you go back, you bring a relief for about 2 weeks, and then you go back to the old problem which has not been addressed. The structure one I've talked about. The other one is to do with financial fragilities in the market, the vulnerability of your financial system. And the financial system at the moment is more or less in chaos. They saw we've taken 34 banks and made it 23, and now they've got capitalization. They don't understand the economy they are managing. They don't know what they have actually done. They have collapsed 9 banks to create. When I read a story, I don't know where they actually studied the economics from. They said the deposits in the banks are increasing. Banks' deposits are increasing. And I'm saying, really? What is actually happening? No deposit is increasing anyway. You have taken 34 banks and made it 23. So by ratio, you have reduced the number of banks in your system. Now, GCB, that used to have a certain amount of depositors and a certain amount of deposit. All of a sudden, you've added, UT Bank and Capital Bank to them. So the deposit of UT customers and the deposit of Capital Bank customers have been added to GCB, which is showing you an artificial increase of new depositors, which is not the case. It's an old depositors. It's a reallocation of depositors. Now, foreign banks. People have lost confidence in the Ghana banking system. Therefore, when the collapse was happening, some people took their money from the local banks and put it in the Barclays and the Standard Chartered of this world. So when you go to Standard Chartered, all of a sudden, their client base has increased because some people have switched. They have reallocated. So Standard looks like it's growing to you. So it's a little growth there. But actually, it's people who are bringing their money there because they have more confidence in them. So the net effect is actually zero. You have 200,000 customers, okay? And you have collapsed the banks. So the 200,000 customers needs to find somewhere to go. So all of a sudden, you look around and say, we have got new customers of 200,000 without you knowing where they are coming from. And you are saying they are new customers. They are old customers from the collapsed banks who have reallocated to the banks you have put them in, and also to the foreign banks that you've gone in. So basically, the financial fragility, which is the vulnerability of our financial system, there is a systemic risk, as economists and financiers will tell you. In our economy now, So there is lack of confidence. That is why nobody is buying our domestic bonds. You go to Eurobond and you do a bond and you said it's been oversubscribed. 21 billion people, if 21 billion money is coming in and we can only take 3. Again, it's either they don't understand the bond market itself that they are playing in, or they want to cover certain things up. And let me just take short time to explain to you what happens. When you go to the bond market and people are pricing, after you've told all your stories, lies or good stories, the market starts bringing in bids. So Bank A will come. You will give an indicative price of what you will pay for that. Then people come in and say, okay, I will give you 100 million. But actually you said you want 8%. But if I give you 100 million, I actually want 10%. Somebody will come. Nobody, since you've given an indicative price, nobody will bid below that indicative price. Because that is the floor that you are prepared to pay. So nobody will come and say, I'll give you 7%. I'll give you this and take 7%. They will not be going 8 and above. Now, when you do the order book, you will have people in the order book who are probably telling you that we want 10% or 12% for a certain amount we are giving you. Cumulatively, when you put all the orders together, you get 21 billion. It doesn't mean that $21 billion is prepared to pay the price that you have settled on. Because if you do your cutoff price and say, okay, I'm taking looking at all this, I'm taking 8.125. You don't have 21 billion money chasing 8.125. That's not how it works. So you cannot say that. Give you a market example. Somebody leaves you with some tomatoes to sell. And then people come and they say the tomatoes, I'll pay 5 cedis. Somebody comes and says, I'll pay 10 cedis. They say, well, the owner is not here, so I can't sell it to you. Wait till the owner comes. When the owner comes, I'll call all of you to come. And then whoever the owner wants to sell this thing to, because the owner has an indicative price. The owner comes in and says, you know what, I will get 7 cedis for this. Yes, your other books has people who say they will pay 5 cedis for the tomatoes, and you have put them there as oversubscribers. But actually, they are not paying you. They won't pay you 7 cedis because they don't have that belief in the economy to pay you that 7 cedis. And then you come and tell us that you have been oversubscribed because you have people who are ready to pay, get you serious amount of money. And it's actually as a result, the prices they are getting, it's as a result. And let me give you one example quickly here. They say, oh, we went to the bond market and we got prices cheaper than that. We've done 7 bonds in this country. First one we did was 207. Then we did one in 2013, 2014, 15, 16, 17, no bond was done. 18, they did their first one and they went for 2 billion. And then in 2019, they've gone for 3 different bonds. Now, the bonds they've gone for, they compare the bonds and say, oh, look at that. We've got 8.13 and 8.95. When you went to the market, you got 10.75. They are comparing apples with oranges. Because the bond that we got for 10.75 is a bond of 1 billion, yes, but with a maturity date of 15 years. It is not the same as the bond they've gone for with a maturity date of 12 years. So you cannot compare the two. If you really want to compare their bond that is similar to ours, compare the one we went for in 2014. We went for 1 billion and it was for 12 years. And the coupon rate is 8.12, 8.12. Now you compare the same bond, the 1 billion they went for 12 years, it was 8.13. So they were slightly, higher in terms of, but when you even come to the one we did in 2013, it was for 7.87. That was the coupon rate. which is far cheaper, about 26 basis points cheaper than the same bond they did. Therefore, they cannot compare their bond with our bond and say that that is what, even their own bond, the one they did in 2018, was a cheaper bond than the one they did in 2019. If you look at the bond, the 1 billion bond they did in 2018 for 30 years, that bond had a coupon rate at 8.62. Now, when you compare it to a similar bond, which they have put here 31 years, which is pretty much the same type of bond, the coupon rate is 8.95. So they are paying 8.95 for 2019 bond, which they paid 8.62 for. And they come and tell us that they have done so well that they bring the bond proceeds and do a kinky party with it.
I'll be very glad if you can wrap up for me.
Yeah. So, a last one. The other cause of the currency issue is to do with what economists call external vulnerabilities. And sometimes external vulnerabilities are things you don't have control of. As I said, we don't produce CD. We don't produce dollars, sorry. It's an American currency produced by the Americans. We don't control U.S. interest rates. It's an interest rate controlled by U.S. and they're doing what is good for them, especially with Trump in office now. He's doing what is good for America, not what is good for the rest of the world. So if the central bank, the Federal Reserve, decides to increase interest rate in the United States, which obviously will make their currency, strengthen their currency, because it means that if you invest in America, you will get a much higher, returns than previously. Therefore, it is easy for money to move from elsewhere, like our economy, developing economy, and go back to the United States. So some of these things, you cannot do anything about it. But what you have to do is to build a buffer, what they call the reserve buffer, to be able to cushion you once such shocks occur, so that you will be able to look at it. So by all means, if they want to call us to know what the problems are, that's what I've given. I've given 5 problems we are facing with the currency. It's not just structural causes that they are talking about. 5 of them. So if they want to talk, they should tell us when and where, and we'll meet them.
No, thank you very much. Just before I come to Prof, a couple of messages on our PAB MCGH platform. AU Farouk in Tamale says, AU Farouk, good morning to you, Senna, and to your able panelists. The RTI bill will now expose the corrupt deals of departments and government appointees who are hiding vital information for the past years. We hope government will allow information regarding corruption cases in offices to be given out. Kojo Ado Kwao says, this president and government are just in to make fanfare and jamboree. They're just in to chop money, make money, loot the coffers of state. They now want to entrench their stay by manipulating the EC, which is now in their grips. But my wonder is why everyone is quiet, looking on, and this government is behaving as if they are the only people who own this country. This one from Mohammed Idira says, please, Senator, tell the NDC leadership that every Ghanaian knows that the NPP has failed. They should stop drumming that and pay maximum attention on the rigging machine that the NPP are putting in place. The election 2020 might be won, but it's bound to be stolen. We shall hold our leaders responsible if they sit down and let that happen. Thank you for your message. Amek Beto, that's and he says, hi, Mr. Host, your team and your panelists. Those people claim they have the men, but these people have the men. Your message is unclear. If you can look at it and resend it. Senior Boham says the NDC should never participate in any bipartisan inquiry into the depreciation called by these MPP people. The leopard never changes its spots. They are sinking, and they are looking for some scapegoats to join them so that they would eventually say we are all involved. And Issa Shitu, I've gotten your message, and a couple more messages coming, and it's difficult to sieve them. Prof.
Well, thank you very much. I think Honorable's submission was very, very fantastic. Having been in government and the former Deputy Finance Minister, and Comrade Mutala, obviously having been involved in the helm of affairs in terms of managing the country. They definitely have rich experience in terms of knowledge. And some of the submissions, I can say, were spot on. The historical issues he raised, I will take cue from some of them in my submission. Obviously, in 1967, precisely after the overthrow of the Nkrumah regime, then they introduced what they call the new cedi, NCD. And that's when they made it 1 cedi 20 pesos to the dollar. And Nkrumah's one was the 10 shilling that became the cedi, and I think it's our 1 cedi then in 65 February when it was introduced was 8 shillings. 8 shillings then will be 96 pesos, and then 4 pesos in addition. Yeah. So we've been through this, but he made a fantastic point that obviously globally, because of historical socio-economic development, certain currencies backed by their productive capacity in terms of those countries, a pound, the CFA, of course, and the French francs, the Swiss francs, the dollar, had become powerful and they virtually become medium or media of exchange. And so with time, the dollar has taken over. So I believe financial experts will know why you arrange the whole global fiscal economy in that regard. Nobody takes cedi to Dubai to go and do business. Even the Chinese currency cannot even do so. So that is accepted, and it becomes a challenge in managing your economy. So you made a good point that Nkrumah, noting that, really set up the manufacturing base of this country, because willy-nilly every country will import. The countries with advanced scientific and technological background even import. The US imports, Britain imports, China even imports. So definitely you cannot live in an economy where you say you produce virtually everything. It's not true to life. Now, what is happening and what gradually will come and stare us in the face is the ideological direction of this country. Because I circled this and I said the fundamental issue is production. Of course, we are a member of the global community. There are international conventions. I think, Comrade Mutala, you can tell me those that we have signed and we cannot go against. Perhaps you cannot slap or lay embargo on importation of goods and services once you also want to trade globally. But then I don't think in setting up those conventions and the terms for which we are ceded or to meet the demands will mean that we cannot have discriminatory policies to also have the comparative edge in what we do. Yesterday when I spoke on this issue, I didn't want to go to the Kokuba's case in 1980 when he took Kobe and Yokegari to Parliament to express a point about the cost of living. I will have brought the 10-pack march. And Honorable, it's a challenge we take for granted, but I would like to make my submission from the street man's viewpoint. Because at the end of the day, the excellent submissions by the technocrat will make sense when those submissions or those policy implementations translate into the well-being of the ordinary fellow. If you sit in a trotro and you go into Ho and they say it's 1 cedi 20 pesos, you feel it, you know it's cheap, isn't it? If today we go to the pumps and they say that petrol has reduced to 3 cedis a liter, we feel it. And so that's, for me, is a fundamental issue. Honorable, I made a point that when you pick a 10-pack matchbox pack, the small ones that we used to put in our pocket when smoking was in vogue, the 10 of them, if you will go to Kaneshi Market, which is the closest by, is 1 cedi. Has anybody worked out the economics of making sure that we get that matches at the retail at any corner? 1 cedi. 10 small pack in a sub pack of 10 from Malaysia. All the input variables in terms of cost of production, transportation, landing at Tema, tariffs, retailing, sub-retailing, to the point that we buy it for 1 cedi. Matches, which we used to produce in this country. And that's the micro level. And what we're talking about, look, I've just made a sub-list here. Let's take one sector. And I said the transportation sector. We may not have reached the technological advanced stage to produce the V8s in that sophisticated manner, or the articulator 8-engine, the 8-cylinder engine that is cutting, the articulators that are cutting goods and moving around all over the country. But for them, perhaps, we will not live across the country. What do we produce? What do we produce? From fuses, fan belts, small bulbs, the whole transportation sector is contribution to GDP. What do we produce here? Come to agriculture. We say we are an agrarian people. Our cocoa, perhaps apart from the seedlings that we can produce because we managed to get the seed stock over here, agrochemicals. All the inputs, any form of agricultural enterprise, any commodity production, tomatoes, anything. What do we produce here? Fertilizer that we without which we cannot even get our high yield. Do we produce anything here? Cocoa that we have led the world for the past century or so. The sacks. Do we produce the sacks here? Cocoa sacks. We import them from Bangladesh. Education. Senna, we have over 500,000 kids in senior secondary. If you aggregate all of them, maybe from nursery, I believe we have more than 5 million children going to school. Let's list them. The pen you're using, pencil, eraser, exercise book, textbook. List them. Math set. Nothing is produced here. And even in recent memory, Senna, ask your uncle or your old man, at Champon's time, we produce everything here, and by arrangement, because see, Longmans, Macmillan, Evans, these major publishers, we got the rights from them. The Ghana Education Service that was created in 1974 from subject teachers wrote excellent books printed at Tema State Publishing Corporation. Exercise books were made here. So you have 5 million children in school using what you can call exhaustible commodities like pencils, pen, erasers, exercise books, etc. Now even the dress that they wear to school, the fabric, you don't produce anything here. Go to the health sector. Apart from few pharmaceutical companies, I wouldn't mention this because it's a commercial program, who are helping in producing medication or drugs. Over 80% of the drugs that we have in this country are imported. And we fall sick. Go to any pharmacy. People walk in. Mama, or talking to the pharmacist. Me home family. They will ask him this and they will just take something, get this antibiotic, etc. So even going to the drugstores, people are even getting health delivery. What do we produce here? Then come to talk about chemicals, etc. These are the stark realities, and then the list is inexhaustible. I just googled, and I was looking at the trade statistics, and they said in 2017, what we have perhaps as recently, the recent or the latest data, we exported over, the total export bill came to about $14 billion. I will forget about the millions and the thousands. And the total import was about 12 billion. So obviously we have some 1.7 billion or so trade surplus, but that's not that's deceptive. Our 39.92% of GDP was for exports, and then 50.72 was for import. And you know the export over 80% came from cocoa, gold, and raw ore, bauxite, etc. That's where the majority of the 14 billion from these selected or few commodities. 70% of the imports, do you know what? Local consumption. Your matches, your tuna, your day-old chicks, your rice, your oil, your onion, your tomato paste of different varieties advertised all the time. Even your alcoholic beverage, the alcohol itself is imported. The flamboyant adverts we see that cite our young people into drinking all sorts of concoctions, they are all the alcohol. And the sugar, all imported. So when you have an economy like this, where now rice had become a staple, number one staple, those in service at this moment, burial or funeral service, after 1 o'clock there will be some refreshment, engagements, and so many. Our local Akple, TZ, Kenke will be some limited service. Is by request. It is a fried rice and all those foreign taste goods, what they call food items, that will be the main feature. And look at the amount of money we spend. If we're spending about $500 million a year to import rice, and you take the list, I believe if 70% of your total, you spend 70% on local consumption imports, then you're looking at over 10 billion. And you continue like that. Senna, at least the few things that we produce here, I wouldn't mention names. If you want to have your breakfast, at least we know the milk that is here will be with us for a long time. That's what we use, don't we? If we want to talk about washing, we know the detergents that have been with us. That's what we use. So you mean if I go to the market and I have a match produced from industrial area, it used to be in Kedea, it was brought to the industrial area, a new match factory. Why would I go and buy match from Sweden, 3 pots, or from Malaysia? Why would I buy it? Toothpick? Why would I buy toothpick from abroad? Why? Honorable, these are the crucial fundamental issues. And yesterday when a question was put whether there's a need for NDC or the parties, for me, I said, look, God in his infinite wisdom really is bringing the reality home. So if the finance minister told the Honorable House or the August House that the president directed him, and against all the wits and the knowledge that he has, now the president says, go and find the solution. Then he, whether that was the directive or he now digested the instructions and said, now I need a bipartisan. I said, perhaps it's a reflection that the managers of the economy have come to their wits' end. And perhaps it is God's opportunity to add, if you sit down, obviously you are not going to come to the table, and the finance minister may even participate and open the meeting and tell us that the president, our head of state, says that let's find solution. There must be a background. There must be a background, and the chairman of the management team will put his wonderful team issue. We say, look, do we start this discussion on the basis of the fact that you have the men? Then perhaps that is the finest opportunity to let him end the campaign 2 years into the administration, to end the campaign and be humble to say that, look, I was still in the campaign mood and the victory excitement is still there. Let's end it here. And sincerely, we are Ghanaians. We might have played politics, but the reality is what the president has asked for. And then to those of us on the outside, let them go and deliberate on the matter, and then come and tell us the solution. And then we will tell them that we may not be financial experts, but the reality is what we know. And no matter what, if we are to pump $10 billion into this market every month from the central bank, look, Ghana is a hub. The whole sub-region, we say we rationalize the black market into forest bureaus, but they know, the Bank of Ghana governor knows, that the import bill that the finance minister will come and tout that we projected to get so much from port revenue, and they've been saying so. And I asked the ordinary question that the banks, the formal sector, the financial sector, the percentage that we get, which is a percentage of some quantum amount used in imports that we get from Tema and Takrady and to some extent Kotoka, who supplies those dollars for which goods come to Tema and for which we say we've gotten so much of revenue, and there's a shortfall or we exceeded the target? Where do they get the money? Those of us in the system, we know how the system works. And there are people who don't take money to the banks, but yet they are flying off tonight, coming back on Monday, going every week, goods are landing, the GRA will just collect the revenue. So the informal sector that we have not captured, that informal sector wills a lot. And so if you are not careful in managing the system, that is what the reality that will face you. Look, in the 70s, when we were really producing, and that was when we have an exchange control financial policy, you only got raw materials after government had allocated you your import license, then you back it with letters of credit. And that was the exchange control regime. At least, I can't imagine, I can't just, if I look back in time, we produce virtually our basic needs. Not everything though. But shirt that you are wearing, is it this shirt that I'm wearing, or this polo shirt, golf shirt that Honorable is wearing? We produce everything. The JB shirts, the Van Heusen, etc. Quality. Electric bulbs, we're assembling vehicles, we're producing ties. At least we imported. So if you have a currency or you run an economy where consumption, the taste that we have acquired, we cannot even meet half of it here. Obviously, the city cannot bluff. The city cannot bluff. So Nkrumah's led agenda that makes sure that the basic things that we produce, a Siama oil mill, and the protagonist will come and tell you that, the antagonist will come and tell you that Nkrumah placed industrialization ahead of agriculture. What does that mean? If you have a naturally endowed environment like the Western region, or rather what we call the high rainforest, where you produce a lot of oil palm, coconut palm, what will you use it for? So 60 years down the road, what do we use coconut for? Articulators live here and go to the Western region and Central region and bring whole coconut to come and just crack and sell 2 cedis and throw the hacks away. When you had a factory in the heart of the production of the raw material, extracting oil onto the market. In the north, we had the factory that was also producing oil from groundnut or Bambara groundnut. All these are gone. And Commander is talking about the Pra Basin. Rich for sugarcane. So if you put a factory there to produce sugar and you get alcohol, is this something out of place? And this is a project that should have been continued by this regime. And over $500 million that you spend in importing alcohol from Brazil and sugar. I'm talking about, do we produce sugar in this country? Can you imagine any breakfast without sugar? Even the pharmaceutical industries, the sucrose that they use, or whatever organic sugar that they use, they import virtually everything. So, Senna, these are the elementary issues that ordinary man will understand, and a non-finance fellow or a non-economist will tell you. And we are not talking out of tune. They are the realities. So, no matter how you put it in a technical language or the terminology that we use, it is so far, it's about managing fiscal policy. It is not about transforming this economy. And let me end by citing the transportation sector again. When you Google right now, and Google and cocoa board, cocoa freight, if you take 100 kilogram bag of cocoa, 10 will be 1 ton. When you transport these 1 ton, the rate is $266 from Tema to the Americas per ton rate. And I'm saying, find out from an articulator driver or owner if he transports 1 ton cargo with articulator running on 28 ties, the cost of the vehicle, the fuel cost from Sefiyo also to Takoradi Harbour, that distance, even the fuel alone that we will use will be more than the transportation of that same ton from Tema Harbour to. So why are we doing this to ourselves? So we get our cocoa money, and the cost of even marketing cocoa, just sheer transportation itself takes a chunk out. Some few months ago, we were on this program, and cocoa farmers were saying that they have not been paid. They just dump their cocoa at the produce buying agency, and then it takes them time to get the money. Everything we are doing is most expensive. So what are the stepwise, concrete, forward-marching solutions that we have? Accra, Achimota, Tema Rail was constructed way into the Tema Harbour. Why? To cut heavy cargo. We've made much noise with the railway ministry, and it is about rehabilitating a line that will end up at Asaprochona, that will not get to the Tema Harbour. So, and another rail line, portions not rehabilitated in Sawam. So, Ghana Railway and Ports, or whatever, the railway ministry, its whole achievement in 2 years is to set a passenger rail line from Accra to Sawam to compete with the Totro. As we talk now, if you go to the Ofanko Metro Mass Ayalolo, the buses are parked over there. You know what? They cannot compete. So the buses are parked over there. The drivers are laid off. The mates are laid off. And the buses are there. Money spent to bring the Ayalolo buses. Everything we do is so expensive, wayward, reckless. And so for me, I find some God-sent opportunity in this committee. Whether the parties participate or not, perhaps it's brought to the fore the end of the rhetoric from the vice president, because you play the soundbite. Professor Bujamba for Boachi Ajako mentioned them. Wonders. The fantastic team. So the fantastic team, is it that they want us to support the fantastic team and they are still super, or they will be brought down to earth? And we start with a premise that, look, things are not working, we don't have the solution, so let's find the solution. If we get the solution, obviously, some of us know 9 out of 10, it will come back to the same point that the fundamental issue of production, to back the city, to let the city in the local balance bluff a bit, will be the issue. If we don't produce and we go the way we are going, we are having the major festivals. We'll soon start with our fasting, and then 30 days later, Ramadan, the festival will be here. Then it will move on to Christmas, and the importers, and then schools will be reopening major in September. So the educational goods will also. So that is the traders know the business terrain. They know the business terrain. They know when they have to go for the goods. And so long as you are not producing here to make it impossible for them to find that business attractive, they will do so, because they are rational human beings. They must live. So for me, I'll say let the bipartisan committee come. Let us know live what they will be doing, and let us put that against the vice president's statement that he has the best team, and that the city has depreciated, but it didn't depreciate at a greater rate compared to the NDC's time. My God, the thing is about 5 cedis. Are we interested? It's as if you are giving me a punch and you say, "Oh, this is a featherweight punch." So even if it's painful, there is mild. A punch is a punch. Heavyweight punch is a punch. A featherweight punch is a punch. So, colleagues, I think for me, let us see what will come out of this. If it's not going to work out, we will know. If it works out also, we will know. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Before I go to Mr. Pratt, just to remind you that Franco Trading Enterprise, if you buy any of the products being sold at any of their shops through their online platforms, either a mobile phone accessories, laptops, printers, TVs, using their online platform, either their website or their app. Their website at www.francotrading.com, www.francophones.com. If you buy from any of those websites or you buy through the Franco Trading app, they give you a 30% discount on any of the products you buy, and they deliver it free if you're within Accra. So take advantage of that opportunity. Mr. Pratt.
Well, Senator, first of all, I'd like to ask permission to leave after my presentation. I have to be at the induction course for new members of the Socialist Forum, which started at 8 o'clock. I'm very late now. So I'm going to try and do a very short presentation which would combine the two issues. Now, first of all, it is important to recognize that this so-called bipartisan approach and issues that spring therefrom is not new. It's not new at all. In fact, I recall that in 1982-83, the Ghanaian economy was in very dire straits. And as part of the effort to get out of the woods and so on, the then Provisional National Defense Council, under the leadership of Mr. Rawlings, decided to bring as many people as possible, people from different places and so on, together to debate, to argue, and to build a consensus around the way forward. The initial discussions led to the emergence of two options. What was then known as the Yao Graham option, the Graham option, and the option which was then put forward by Dr. Kwesi Botwe and Dr. Abe, and so on. In those discussions, it was clear that the majority of people who participated in those discussions opted for the Yao Graham approach to the resolution of the economic problems which confronted us. Strangely, the government then decided to go with the joint option of Dr. Kwesi Botwe and Dr. Abe. And indeed, to a very large extent, some of the problems we are encountering today can find its foundation in the 1983 approach we adopted, leading to the adoption of the Economic Recovery Program. Now, not too long ago, the Ghanaian economy was also again in very dire straits. I mean, there have been other instances and so on. I do not want to go there. I want to cut my submission. And the suggestion was that we should bring all people with some experience and some knowledge together. And that it was proposed that we should have a meeting at Senchi to resolve the crisis, or at least to put brains together to resolve the crisis. I recall very, very clearly that when plans for the meeting were very far advanced, the New Patriotic Party pulled out of that meeting. and indeed members and associates of the party who had earlier committed to participating in that event withdrew. Okay. Now, at the end of the meeting, what came out of that meeting was what was then known as the Senchi Consensus. Okay? The Senchi Consensus then formed the basis for going to the IMF. And we were told then by Mr. Setekwe and others that they were going to the IMF with a homegrown program. Homegrown program which was developed from the so-called Senchi Consensus. Now there's something very, very significant that nobody is talking about. The Akufo-Addo administration, since it assumed office, has not pursued any original program. Indeed, what it did was to extend the IMF program, and it is now walking out of that IMF program, which was the result of the Senchi Consensus. So when they claim victories, when they claim that the fundamentals of the economy are good and so on, we should not forget that by and large, they are implementing the same IMF package which resulted from the Senchi Consensus. And this is a very important dimension that we need not to forget. It is still that IMF program. They just exited that IMF program. Now, significantly for me, on the day they made the announcement that they were exiting the IMF program, on the same day, the information which was released was that the IMF was giving Ghana $182.5 million, a facility. You understand? Now, that for me is significant. Okay. Now, you have a finance minister who goes to Parliament and says that, look, we want a bipartisan investigation of the causes of the problem. Now, for me, the problem is not the depreciation of the cedi. The depreciation of the cedi is a symptom of the fundamental problems of the economy. The depreciation of the cedi has a direct link with trade policy and its implementation. It has a direct link with fiscal policy and its implementation, and so on. It has a direct link with everything and anything which decides the fundamentals of the economy. So the depreciation of the cedi is a symptom of a problem, which has been described by others as structural, and so on. Now, be that as it may, why would an MPP administration be calling for a bipartisan approach when it boycotted a bipartisan approach in the past? That's a very significant question. They were offered an opportunity to take part in building a national consensus on the economy in Senchi. They refused to participate in that effort. Several years later, they've come to see, or they are suggesting to us, that the Senchi approach indeed is a better approach. You understand? What is it that they have seen which now convinces them that their boycott of the Senchi arrangement was wrong? Very, very simple question, but the answer to that would be exceedingly interesting. And I say this because, you see, this calls for bipartisan approach and so on. The motivation can be many. One of the reasons why anybody will call for a bipartisan approach is simply this. We associate you with what we are going to do so that in the event of failure, you cannot talk because you are associated with it. You understand? That can be one reason. The other reason will be a very simple one. that, look, we've tried everything that we thought could save the situation. We are not making any headway. So let us approach others and see whether we can develop some new thinking which will bring a solution. That I would consider a very genuine approach to the problem. But if it's an approach about silencing people and making people dip their hands into the blood so that we will all be guilty and so on, then I smell something sinister, which should not be encouraged and so on. And there could be other reasons. And as I said, I don't have sufficient time, so I'm trying to cut down everything. But you see, let us also try and agree on the nature of the problem. What is the problem that we are facing? Because whatever consensus you want to build, whatever solution you want to design and so on, you need to have an idea of what problem you are tackling so that you can bring people together to think. Now, if you think that the problem is a purely technical problem, you bring technical people to brainstorm. If you think that the problem has to do with agriculture, why would you bring sanitary inspectors to discuss that? You bring people who are related to agriculture. You understand? If you think that the problem is an engineering problem, you will bring engineers to come and solve the problem, and so on. I hope you understand what I'm saying. So this bipartisan approach, what informs the so-called bipartisan approach to identifying the problem and finding a solution to the problem? What informs it? What is the nature of the problem which confronts us? Now, Senator, I am very, very clear in my mind. Absolutely clear in my mind that what we are facing in Ghana is the crisis of neo-colonial development, which is a derivative of capitalist development. You understand? So if you bring bipartisan, whatever people together who believe that the capitalist mode of production and distribution is sacrosanct, you will not get anywhere, because you'll be replicating all the things you have done during colonialism and after colonialism to this day, which would only worsen the problem. You understand what I'm saying? Because I'm fully convinced, and I have no doubt, that we are experiencing the crisis of neocolonialism, which is a derivative of capitalism. And I would explain. You see, Ghana was under the colonial yoke for so many years, more than 100 years of colonialism. On 6 March, not on 6 March, 1951, when Ghana became partially self-governing, and you need to read Nkrumah's autobiography. If you read Nkrumah's autobiography, Nkrumah explains the circumstances he met when he assumed office as leader of government business. After so many years of colonialism, the new administration did not have a desk. There was no desk, there was no table, there was no pencil, no paper. They had to start from scratch. So those who claim that we benefited from colonialism and so on, they should read the testimony of Nkrumah, what he met in office. After more than 100 years of colonialism, we took over with empty covers. We didn't even have a desk and a table, no chair, no pencil, no paper. And indeed at that time, all of Ghana's foreign reserves were not in the country. Our foreign reserves were in the Bank of England. And we had to wage battles to repatriate our own foreign reserves, cocoa reserves and so on. We had to wage battles to repatriate them. Now, there's something that tells the story, and I'm happy that Professor Nino Dowona veered into the railway sector. the design of Ghana's railway system tells a very, very important story about the pattern of development under colonialism. Look at all our railway lines. Where do they start and where do they end? All of our railway lines end at the ports, the harbors. All of our railway lines, they end at the harbors. All of them start from areas of concentration of natural wealth. The places where we have a lot of gold, where we have a lot of diamonds, where we have timber, where we have cocoa, and so on. So the railway line was designed to take away our natural wealth to the colonial metropolis. That's all for which the railway line was developed. And this is perhaps the best testimony that the economy was structured to be a dependent economy, a dependent colonial economy, exporting raw materials, exporting wealth, and so on, and to be import dependent when it comes to our needs for industrialization, our needs for medical care, our needs for so on and so on and so forth. That is the story. Okay. Now, what is happening? Not just Ghana. All the countries around the world who suffered colonialism and so on. We are being told by those who came here to steal our wealth, the people who came here to impoverish us, to exploit us, to abuse us, racist abuse and so on, they are telling us that we have only one option of development. And that one option of development is to follow in their footpath. That we have to adopt the capitalist mode of production and distribution as the only way forward. And somehow, foolishly, extremely foolishly, the leaders of our societies appear to be accepting this or have accepted this. All these so-called highly educated people, educated from Harvard, educated from Oxford, educated from where and where, appear to have accepted this model of development. Now, if you ask yourself very basic questions, the stupidity of this exercise becomes so clear. How did the so-called advanced capitalist states develop? Even there are still questions that you can ask. You understand? Now, these so-called advanced capitalist states, the United States included, Germany included, Britain included, France included, and so on, they were all beneficiaries of the transatlantic slave trade. Listen to me very carefully. Why? Our forefathers were captured and transported outside our continent to go and work as beasts of burden for free. They benefited from free labor. Millions of people were captured as like donkeys to work as donkeys for free. That is how the United States built the foundations of its development. That is how Britain built the foundations of its development and so on. That is the fact. That is the historical fact. Now, Senna, after the transatlantic slave trade, indeed, when the Industrial Revolution began, and this is history and so on, when slave labor was no longer that crucial for production, when slave labor was not that crucial for the accumulation of wealth and so on, in the Industrial Revolution and so on, these countries then became colonial empires. They sat round a table, put the map of Africa on the table, used pencils to draw arbitrary lines on our continent and declared them as their personal possessions. Look, at a point in history, the whole of Namibia was owned by one white person, Sir Rhodes. He owned Namibia, its minerals and everything. Sir Rhodes came to Africa as a tuberculosis patient and somehow acquired the whole of Namibia as his own personal property and so on. Under colonialism, we even lost the right to select our own leaders. We couldn't select our own leaders. District chief executives in Ghana were appointed by the Queen of England and so on. So today, when we are told to adopt the model of Britain, when we are told to adopt the model of France, when we are told to adopt the model of the United States of America, we should be asking one question. Today, Ghana, as Ghana, we want to develop. They say we should follow the example of America. Ask them, which people in the world today we can also go and capture as slaves to come and work for us for 100 years to build that foundation on which capitalism was built in the United States? Are there any people anywhere in the world that we can go and capture as beasts of burden to slave for us for 100 years? Today, which country in the world can we go and colonize? Now, if we cannot capture slaves, if we cannot colonize other people, that option of the United States of America, Britain, and so on, is not available to us. And we should begin to think and think hard. Our problem is that we are following a model whose basis, whose foundation was built on slave labor and colonial exploitation. And we don't have the capacity to enslave others and to build colonial empires. That is our problem. That is the fundamental problem of this economy. This is the fundamental problem of all economies like ours. And unless we wake up to that reality, Master, we'll be fooling ourselves and dancing in circles, and we would never find the solution to the problems that confront us. Now listen, after independence, we tried to build a new model of development. That new model of development said that we needed to prove to the world that the African is not inferior, and that the African is capable of managing his own or her own affairs. So the model then meant, the Nkrumah vision was that we can produce the things that we need for ourselves, okay? And that we would engage in production and increase productivity. Production and productivity are not the same things. Using what advantages we had, and that the things that we cannot produce because of our geographical location and other limitations and so on, we would exchange what we produce for those things and build a self-reliant national economy within the context of continental African integration, economic, political, and social integration. That was the model. Then we were told that that model was a failure, that that model was not giving us cheese imported from Europe, that that model was not giving us sardines, canned fish, that that model was not giving us corned beef, that model was not giving us ideal milk produced by Nestle, and so on. So the reactionary elite in Ghana, who had become so used and so comfortable with Western lifestyles and so on, conspired with the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States of America to overthrow Nkrumah on 24th February 1966. The reversals began from then. As was said by Professor Ninoy Dowona, by February 24th, 1966, you know the West Industrial Area of Accra, where you have Ghanaian Times and so on, that was a hub of production of clothing, loyalty group of companies, so many group of companies. If you went there, it was a busy center of production. Even by 1974, I visited there with one of our Champions commissioners and so on. It was a hub of industrial production. That was known as the West Industrial Area. You understand? West Industrial Area in Accra. Go there today. All those buildings which were engaged in the production of all kinds of things, shirts, shoes, and so on, have now been turned into churches. They are all now churches. Production has ceased completely. You understand? I will try. I left my phone. Next time I come to the studio, remind me. I will read a text message that a very old citizen, senior citizen, sent to me. This senior citizen was telling me that his father left him a fridge, a made in Ghana fridge, an Akasanuma fridge. And that his father left the fridge to him. The fridge is more than 16 years old. That fridge is still working. The motor has never stopped. He then gave the fridge to his son. And the son gave the fridge to his grandson. The fridge is still working, is still in service after 16 years. The motor has never been changed. Ghana made fridge. You understand? We're making matches. Kede Match Factory, we're making matches. We were producing radio sets. We were producing television sets. We were producing garments. We were producing our own clothes and so on. We were producing shirts for exports. You understand? Even under Achampong, Ghana became self-sufficient in food production and we're exporting grain. So what happened? What happened? Today, what don't we import? Ghana is the largest importer of tomato paste from Germany. Are you not ashamed? When you hear this, don't you feel ashamed? Today, we are importing toothpicks. Today, we are importing sandals. Look, from the time that I became conscious of myself, when I became aware of things and so on, up to today, anytime you take Golden Tree chocolate made in Ghana to any international competition anywhere in the world, it's adjudged the best chocolate. We produce the best chocolate in the world. But when you come to Ghana and you want made in Ghana chocolate, you don't find them in the supermarkets. You don't find them in the filling station shops and so on. You find them being carried by weather-beaten children on the streets. If I lie, tell me. When you go to any filling station and you go to their shelf for chocolates, it's all imported from Switzerland, from Kominini and Kominini. You understand? Now, even the Japanese are proving to be smarter than we are. The Japanese now are making a chocolate which they call Ghana. I don't know if you are aware. And it is selling like something on the international market. The Ghana chocolate is selling. Why? Because Ghana has a reputation. When we sell cocoa beans anywhere in the world, they pay us more than any other country because our cocoa bean is premium. And the Chinese, the Japanese are aware of this. So the chocolate that they are producing, they call it Ghana chocolate. And it is being bought like something. What are we doing about our chocolate producing factory? What are we doing about it? You see, Ghanaian engineers and so on are doing a yeoman's job. And if only our governments will give them just a little encouragement. The Cocoa Research Institute is producing cocoa soap. And for those of you who travel and who are familiar with the cosmetic industry and so on, Ghana made cocoa soap. Why? The demand for it is so big. The people who know, they come from the UK and they buy a few boxes and take it back to London and they make a killing from cocoa soap produced by the Cocoa Research Institute in Tafo. The Cocoa Research Institute is complaining that it doesn't have the facilities to maximize production. It can produce a lot more. It is restrained. Why can't we set up a proper factory to produce cocoa soap for export? Wouldn't it make a lot more sense if we produce cocoa soap for export? The same Cocoa Research Institute is producing cocoa brandy, cocoa gin, and cocoa whiskey. I don't know how many of you have seen some before, but I see it. I'm interested, so I chase it and so on. And 3 days ago, I was telling the story of some visitors who came to my house, and I just wanted to test, so I put down a bottle of cocoa brandy. I'm sure they were so disgusted. But then, after some encouragement and so on, one of them said, "Oh, let me try." And the person tried it. So what? What wonderful brandy. I mean, they came from outside. What wonderful brandy. Now, when they were going, everybody wanted to take some along with them. Do you know the problem? The cocoa brandy produced by the Cocoa Research Institute in Tafo is in a plastic bottle with a red cover like this one. Red cover like this one. It is so unattractive. The packaging is horrible. The content is excellent. Just a little money, they will design a sexy bottle. You understand? Sexy bottle. Put that excellent content in a sexy bottle. It becomes marketable and so on. You know Takai? You know Takai? That which is produced by Gihok. One of the remaining, Takai is a hit all over the world.
The sexy bottle.
The bottle is sexy. And of course, the content is excellent. All right? Have you tasted it before? It's a coffee drink. But the bottle is so sexy that when you see the bottle, you want to see what is in it. You understand? And then we are sitting here, rushing to IMF, when the solution is so simple. Look, there are so many countries whose whole wealth and so on is made on just a few products, one or two. Even the great Russia, which is a major producer of oil and so on. Why? Russia's reputation in the world market is perhaps better shaped by vodka than oil. Vodka. What is vodka? What is vodka? If you go to Osu, and you see how they make appetition, they have different types. They have the sugarcane type, they have the ginger type. Those who know help me, and so on. In Osu here, I mean, the drinks they produce in Osu will beat vodka any day. But here we are. The state is not encouraging this production. The state is not encouraging them to develop market strategies and so on, which will put them on the world and so on. But you see, there are other problems that we need to address. All of these factories that Nkrumah built, about 400 of them, were sold to private enterprises, to private capital. You understand? Now, this goes to prove that private capital can never be the engine of growth and development. All the factories which were running under Nkrumah with all the problems that they had and so on, when they went into private hands, what happened to them? They collapsed. So about 400 industries have collapsed when we transferred them into private hands. Look at Tema, the Tema shipyard and dry dock. One of the flagship projects of the Nkrumah era. And so we sold it to some Malaysian company which was being run by retired generals in the army and so on. Why? We had to wage an agitation for the government of Ghana to take it back. After taking it back, what have we done with Tema shipyard and dry dock, which was supposed to be a special establishment which was going to generate so much foreign exchange and so on? It is still tottering and so on. You understand what I'm saying? Now, look, many of the goods that we see in our shops, do we know how these goods come into the shops? We don't know. You understand? Ordinary private citizens, usually ladies and so on, go and find their own dollars from wherever, we don't know. They travel to Dubai, they travel to China and other places, and I'm told Turkey now is also one of the hotspots. And they bring these goods in and stock these shops and so on. Alright? That is what happens. What is the state's involvement? How does the state facilitate this business and so on? Nothing. Indeed, only recently one of our leaders went to Dubai and came back and was saying that the figures made available to him about the gold that goes to Dubai is far more than the official figures of our gold exports and so on. So we can't even track these businesses and so on. We can't track them. Our statistics don't tell us the true story and so on. Now, when you build an economy on the basis that everybody is free to bring in investment, they call it investment, and I will explain to you what the problem is. To bring in investment, everybody is ready to bring in investment, and to take their investment plus profit out. Why would your currency not collapse? Because the people who bring in investment, they bring in small money so that they can take bigger money out. Is that not what investment is about? You have $500. You bring it into an economy. Sometimes you triple it to $1,500 and you take it out. You understand? So, over a period, what is happening? We are depleting our wealth. Okay? Common sense. We are depleting our wealth. You understand? Now, we have all these funny, extremely funny agreements with the multinational corporations. If you take those in gold mining, we have signed foreign exchange retention agreements with them. The terms of these foreign exchange retention agreements say simply that they can retain up to 98%, not 6, not 5, not 20, not 50, 98% of the value of minerals they take out of this economy in banks abroad. So when we sell gold abroad, the revenue doesn't come back into the Ghanaian economy. It is recorded as exports. It would add to the gross domestic product and so on. But it doesn't come into the economy to propel development, even in the gold sector and so on. You understand? We have entered into all kinds of silly regimes and so on, which allows all these transnationals and multinationals and so on to be sucking resources out of our country. Now, you see, Comrade Mutala, right now, they say we have a lot of gold. Fine. They say we have diamonds. Fine. They say we have bauxite. Good. They say we have manganese. Good, and so on. All of these resources are not renewable resources. You understand? When you take gold out of Ghana, you can't grow gold again. It's gone forever. Right now, as we are sitting on gold, diamond, bauxite, and so on, look at the level of our poverty. We can't balance our books. Huge balance of trade deficits and so on. We are sitting on the resources now. These resources, meanwhile, are being carried out of our country, carried out of our continent and so on. Now let us sit down and reflect. 50 years from now, when all these resources, non-renewable resources, have been taken out of the economy, what will be our fate? Is somebody thinking? Is somebody asking the relevant questions? 50 years from today, mark it on the 50 years from today, when all of our gold has been taken abroad, when the diamonds have been taken and so on, at giveaway prices, and we no longer have gold and so on, what would we do? Now, our public officials are so happy about oil and gas. I'm sure that you know better than me. I'm told that the lifespan is around 50 years. So this gas and oil, which is going to last 50 years, what plans do we have to ensure that after 50 years when we no longer have oil and gas, what would we do? It's a huge shame. And then the worst part of it is when people who should know better, when you put microphones in front of them and they start telling you, we have the man, and they start mentioning people and their educational qualifications and so on. My brother, listen to me very carefully. The Nkrumah government, how many university educated people were in the Nkrumah government? Tell me. How many PhDs were in the Nkrumah government? The Nkrumah government had middle school leavers and secondary school leavers and so on. They ran this country for 9 years. Within those 9 years, look at the monumental achievements. Today, when our governments fall into trouble, they don't have money to do things. What do? They go back to the Nkrumah era, pick some of the things that Nkrumah did and sell them so they can balance things. Those plans, that economy, was not run by professors and doctors. It was run by people who applied common sense, ordinary common sense. It was run by the producers, newspaper vendors. Newspaper vendors, they ran that economy. They built the 400 factories. They built the Akosombo Dam. They had a vision which transformed this society. So this whole thing about we have the men and we have the men and Professor so and so and so on is nonsensical, and we should not be repeating it. It's an insult to our people. Our historical record shows that that approach solves no problem. It solves absolutely no problem. Look, Ghana is in deep crisis. The measures which are being taken to stabilize the city have been taken before, on many occasions. They did not stabilize the city. They worsened the situation. And I can say with full confidence that if you keep applying the same solution, you get the same results. The city will depreciate again. It is beginning to appreciate, no doubt, it's beginning to appreciate, but it will depreciate again. And you see, the worst part of it is borrowing money to shore up the city. You borrow money to shore up the city, you will pay. Now when you come to paying, what will happen to the city? And you will not just pay the money you borrowed, you will pay plus interest. I was very, very happy, was it last week, when I heard my very good friend and senior citizen, Mr. Kwame Pienim. I don't know how many of you listen to Mr. Kwame Pienim. I mean, I was so very happy that we still have men like Mr. Kwame Pienim able to stand up and speak without fear and favor. Able to stand up and speak honestly about national issues. And Mr. Kwame Pienim said all these things were showing up the city. It's a waste of everybody's time. Let's get serious. Fortunately, Mr. Kwame Pienim is not a member of the NDC, and I've never known him to be a CPP member or a PNC member. Indeed, he's a founding member of the New Patriotic Party. And I hope, and I can really hope, that they will listen to people like Mr. Kwame Pienim. It will help them and help all of us. Now, the last topic. A new voters register for Ghana. What am I going to say? It's just like the discussions on the economy. People have stopped thinking. And because they are not thinking, they are creating problem after problem for us. Look, I was around in 1992. And I've seen what has happened with the electoral register from 1992. We have compiled new registered and compiled new registered and compiled new registered. We have changed the features of the registration card so many times. Color ID, black and white ID, biometric features, and so on. Are you telling me that there's any change? Look, listen to all our politicians. They still have no confidence in the system. And when you try to find out why they have confidence or they don't have confidence, it's basa. The last elections, the New Patriotic Party fought huge battles over voter ID cards, over the registration process. It alleged that thousands of people who were on the register were Togolese and not Ghanaians. It challenged the basis of the registration, use of NHIA cards and so on. It went to the Supreme Court. They continued the battles until the very last day. We went and had the election. Who won the election? Was the election won by PNC? And they are proud to declare that they won by more than 1 million votes, unprecedented and so on. So what was the need for all those, you know? Now look, the electoral system we have constructed in this country, if we follow, all of us follow the rules, and do what we have to do at the polling station, rigging is impossible. We all did there, we all see people voting and so on, and they finish and they tally, and instead of chasing ballot boxes, you focus on the pink sheets. Who can rig an election? Nobody. Look, I've been around the world. I've been an election observer in Venezuela. Venezuela of all places. Oh. And in many places, you would never observe an election where you are policemen holding AK-47 at polling stations. It doesn't happen. I mean, I saw elections in Havana. My goodness. Armed person at the polling station? Strange. If you come to Ghana on election day, policemen and soldiers dressed in battle gear with heavy weapons. What is that? What kind of picture are we painting about ourselves? And so on. In Ghanaian elections, you even see the movement of armored vehicles. Why? Why? We are so useless, we can't even organize elections. And so on. And all of this is traceable to people who should know better. What has sparked this controversy? There was an IPAC meeting. And yesterday, I had the privilege of listening to Mr. John Buedu, the General Secretary of the New Patriotic Party. And he said that what was in the IPAC communique was not the decision of the IPAC meeting. This is Mr. John Buedu, General Secretary of the New Patriotic Party. Not me, not you. So if something which was not discussed and adopted by the IPAC is put out by the Electoral Commission as a decision of the parties, what does the Electoral Commission expect to happen? Controversy and suspicion. I lie, Master, if I lie, tell me that I lie. It was never discussed. The parties never adopted a position on it. And yet, the EC issued a communique saying that the parties had agreed on it. Hey, babe! You know, and then do you know the worst part? When the controversy was generated and it was being discussed and so on, a deputy chair of the EC actually opened his mouth and said on radio that the opinions of the NDC are not important.
So you should dissolve IPAC.
Yeah, that the opinions of the NDC are not important. And that the political parties will not dictate to them and so on. Official of the Electoral Commission, vice chairman of the Electoral Commission. My goodness. You know, in this country, people are appointed to positions and they immediately begin to see themselves as God.
They are ignorant.
Why? Everybody's position, including the president's position, is at the pleasure of the people of Ghana. If the people of Ghana decide today that we don't want President Akufo-Addo to continue to be president, that is his end. That is why in the Constitution, there are processes for impeachment. They are sitting at the Electoral Commission, they won't learn their lessons. Madam Sawatosa has just been impeached, rightly or wrongly, she's just been impeached. And you think then, you sit there and you think you are God? There is no public position in Ghana which is God-given. Every public position in Ghana is given by the will of the people and can only be held with the approval of the people. How can the Electoral Commission be making decisions without consultations with the parties? In any case, what is that history which led to the establishment of IPAC? Something led to that decision. And the people who sit in the Electoral Commission, they should begin to learn the lessons of their own history. You know, my brother, from what I have come to know, by December 7, 2020, all the commissioners will be new. They will be appointed by His Excellency President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Okay? By December 7, 2020, all the heads of departments of the EC will be new. And so on. Now, given this situation, the people who work in the Electoral Commission have a special responsibility to themselves and the nation to demonstrate beyond doubt their neutrality. I hope you understand what I'm saying. They have a special responsibility. This Electoral Commission now has a bigger duty than Afarijan had, has a bigger duty than Charlotte Osai had, and so on, to demonstrate neutrality. Some of the statements that are coming from there are extremely worrying. I've seen countries go to pieces. In Rwanda, a in a matter of 100 days, 1 million people were butchered. 1 million lives were lost in a matter of 100 days. You understand? I know what disputes about elections can lead to. And please, those who have been charged with responsibility for running elections must realize that they are not superhumans, that they are like all of us, and that a huge burden has been placed on their shoulders, and they have a responsibility to discharge it well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pratt. And just a message from George Nikwe, who is corroborating what you said about the Ghana brand. He says he's in Japan. He said, Uncle Pratt, you are 101% spot on about the chocolate. The Ghana brand chocolate here in Japan is everyone's choice because most Japanese know Ghana has the best cocoa in the world. And a couple more messages coming from some of you on some of the issues we've been discussing. Charles Nyami Asamankese says, when the NPP in opposition were asked to bring alternatives on the economy, they mocked the NDC government and said, we'll steal their policies. Now in government, they're asking the NDC same. Please, what should we tell them? What are the men they claim they had? It says a happy belated birthday to the president and congratulations to Makoliva Kevwo. And this one is for Baba Musa Xiaobao. It's quite a lengthy one, but I'll take portions. It says, so what is wrong with the current biometric register that the boss, Jin Mensa, wants to introduce a new voters register for 2020 elections? I smell a cat, not even a rat. We shall resist any attempt to blow this voter register. Bossman Asari is even worse. He addresses NDC as if he's talking to his students in the lecture hall. He must know what happened to Mrs. Charlotte Osei could befall him in the future, together with Jean Mensa. Let me just read a message from Kojo Chumbuafo. Then he says, Senna, my mom has a Sanyo radio that my father bought for her in 1973, made in Tema, still working like clockwork. Of course, that radio has lived through light of Dumso, Dumdi, and now Dumkeke. As a result, it can only catch radio gold. The dial is actually squelched on radio on 90.5 FM. If you're gonna die, at least die laughing. Today, where is that factory? The first franchise that was granted by Sanyo Japan anywhere in the world. Where is everything we once held dear as Ghanaians? What happened to what we proudly cherished? Today, we are the world's best exporter of dubious pastors and prophets. We are the world's largest exponents of New Age Christianity. Today, instead of working to produce enough for ourselves and to export surpluses to keep our currency competitive, we command the city to rise. We run up the Akosombo Dam and command the rains to fall. Fall in Jesus' name. So, son, I command you to rise. Rise, and I rise to the ATM and send me some momo.
Meet him at
so that MTN can keep exporting their profits and put more pressure on the city. Just to remind you that Kulun Ghana Limited is one of our sponsors, and they're offering you two products. One, blood pressure. The issue of blood pressure and, of course, prostate disorders have become a major topic for discussion. They are offering you two remedies. For Hunchun capsules will help you if you're having prostate challenges. King tablet if you have high or low blood pressure. All you have to do is give them a call, 0244 139 176. 0204 139 176 or 0274 139 176. But don't forget to come get this and other products, including X and Y granules, Arba Bazem pills, and Mr. Q in any leading pharmacy, chemical, and herbal shop. And we have. My producer is still telling me what to do, by the way, but 10 minutes each on our very next topic. Prof.
You know, I think Kwesi Pratt said the ball rolling on the
matter of the Electoral Commission and new register.
We can only advise, let's perhaps say that the deputy chair.
And Prof, perhaps you can put that together with the right to information bill that was passed into law.
So let's only hope that the deputy chair spoke out of frustration. But if indeed he meant what he said, then he has to revise his notes and take away the classroom experience from the reality of our electoral system. Because IPAC came into being, though you can say there is no law backing the establishment of IPAC, but by convention, it is a major forum for who matter in the electoral system, the political parties. And indeed, it's not only the political parties who are on the forum with the EC. Donors who have held and supported us for a long time are also members of IPAC. And maybe the new leadership must take note. For the chairperson, her whole experience is on the political party's platform. You understand? If she has any pedigree with respect to the electoral system, it is because of the political party's platform. Yes, in 2003. And this is what had been the platform on which she stood to get to this position. I think she must really call the deputies and members of the commission to order. But I think it's a matter that obviously the reality will dawn on people to note that the electoral system or the democracy that we are practicing, we are all stakeholders, and the fact that you are an independent body does not make you an autocratic entity, because everybody is subject to the constitution, which is the supreme law of the country. And so let's, for me, I don't think we need to belabor this issue. At the end of the day, the reality is that it is consensus building. What the parties will take will be the issue that we have to deal with. The right to information, this had been a major issue, and I'm happy Honorable is here. He was there in the last parliament, so they can then do the justice to this topic. But at any rate, we were informed that the bill having passed is going to be processed with the technical inputs for the president to sign so that it becomes a law. But it will actually come into being in terms of appropriations come 2020, because we're going to factor its operations into the budget maybe come November. Let's hope that the cost element that we were told is now all bills should come with the cost benefit or the cost component. And if you apply for some information from any state establishment, there will be a cost component. Who meets the cost? We don't know. So it is important that this has come to light, and we give credit to everybody who played a role in one way or the other. It's been there from President Kufuor's time, through President Mills, Mahama, and now. So credit goes to everybody that played a role, and of course the media that championed this cause all over the years. So for me, it is positive, and let's hope that it will bring a new dimension to our attempt at democratic governance. Thank you.
Prof, thank you very much. Just two messages before I come to Honorable. Mabel Awuku says, when you think of winning power on lies, and those lies won you power, those lies will expose you. Baomia, your lies are exposing you now. Take it as such. You are a failed so-called MPP economic wizard. Mustafa Tahiru says, NDC really have the men and women. Great submissions by the panelists. So Cicero says, now even when someone sends you money, you can't get it. I don't know what that is about. Julius Agahoa and in Asawa says, Senanombo, Nana Akufo-Addo and Jean Mensa have started laying the foundation for their 2020 rigging agenda. When despots or corrupt politicians try to consolidate power for themselves, one of the ways that they accrue influence is to rig elections. The opposition parties, led by the NDC, must resist almost by the Jean Mensa to rig the election. Musa Abato says, Senna, I agree entirely with Honorable Setekpe. You don't need a rocket scientist to tell you if this super incompetent and substandard Akufo-Addo Bawumia government has followed what GM administration laid out. We wouldn't be in the state of mess. But because they called it reckless borrowing, and it's now a useless borrowing under your care. You related it to a family and friends economy, but under your leadership is nepotism, including girlfriends economy. Hence, the economy is intensive care unit. Is spectator Dr. Bawumia in Ghana. # God save Ghana. Honorable.
Yeah, thank you very much. This Electoral Commission issue that was mentioned is actually quite interesting. That after a meeting, a communique is issued, and the people who were present at the party, or at least a party who was present at the party or at the meeting, says that what was issued was not what was discussed. So I don't know. Does that mean that basically people have decided to take matters into their own hands and do whatever they have been charged to do? Well, it's quite worrying. But I do hope that sense will prevail, and that whether you are the EC or you are in a political party or you are in a country, we all have the same country we live in. And whatever happens in this country will happen to all of us. And that anybody who's been given a position of responsibility to make sure that the peace that we have, which guarantees us to develop economically, is actually or becomes a shared responsibility for all of us to make sure that it happens, and that anybody or anyone's actions or inactions does have consequences, and that people should think carefully before they get into things. I mean, doing new identification cards and all that, I don't know whether there's a need for it, but as I said, people should make decisions that are objective decisions that whatever role you've been played to, you've been put to play, you make sure that you make the right decisions and not make the decision based on certain motivations, which in the long run will not augur well for all of us. On the issue of the RTI, I was in Parliament today, and I was quite pleased because when I heard about this, it's been basically something that's been going for 20 years as a speaker, second deputy speaker, Honorable Bagbe, basically told us. And I think it was quite befitting that, I don't know whether it was planned or not, but I thought it was quite befitting that he, being the longest serving member of Parliament, was actually in the chair to, pass this. It's long overdue. So many things has happened to it, and I do share props that this is not something that anybody should take a credit, for it. It's been going on, so I understand, since 1999. So basically, 20 years. I hope that His Excellency the President will do the needful when all things are put together, for him, and that hopefully this actually, gets implemented and works well for us. My honorable brother here, who was with me in the last Parliament, and God willing, inshallah, will be with us again in the next Parliament.
Inshallah.
Was part of this, and so many other people. So the important thing is that it took 20 years, maybe more years than needed, but at least it is here, and we should all make good use of it and make sure that it works for the people of Ghana.
Thank you very much. Well, I'll come to Comrade Murtala shortly, but I'm just trying to make space and read some of my messages. There are a bunch of them. Willie Doe, on PAB MCGH, Willie Doe says, this is what we Ghanaians deserve. Emptying our water jars just because of a dark cloud. Akufo-Addo with the syndicates are the biggest setback the country have ever had. I wonder why we are still holding on till 2020. Abigail Tego says, I can never understand this. The land is ours, resources are ours, our return 2%. No sense. The policy must change now. Bernard K. Yabua says, everybody knows our problem, but none have solutions. Malalio, that's an interesting name. Ghanaians are very good in discussions of problems, but we can't solve it. Why? And well, so those are just some of the messages that are there. And Ebenezer Sebi says, Mr. Pratt, your summary makes me cry, and I wish the younger generation would understand your contribution to the nation and the African continent. Well, so those are just some of the messages. Comrade.
Senna, since I have just 10 minutes, I would want to just apportion the first 3 minutes on the right to information bill. I was particularly involved when I was the Deputy Minister for Information, and we all know the challenges back and forth that indeed came with it. The fact that there have been amendment and counter-amendment and proposals that have been made. Even on the very day this bill was passed, there were still proposed amendments. So what it means is that we certainly can't have a perfect bill, now law, expecting that His Excellency the President would give his accent. The strange aspect of it is that this government is saying that its effect will start after 1 year, that is in 2020. It is very clear to everybody that inshallah they are sensing defeat in the 2020 elections, and they think that if the bill is passed, the rot that this government is engaged in will be exposed in a legendary fashion, and that is why they are trying to avoid that. I have no doubt in mind that inshallah when the NDC comes to power in 2021, we will implement this to the fullest. So it is good that it's been passed. Information should be made accessible. We operate a system of government that can better be described as winner take all, and it is the constitution that allows that. If you take, I think, Article 63 thereabout talks about the fact that we do elections and you have someone who wins depending on the number of votes. Article 50 is talking about the legislative elections. So it's a winner take all. So when you operate a system of governance that is a winner take all system, where you have power concentrated in the hands of just a particular political party that got more votes in an elections, you certainly would want to have people having access to question the system, and the Right to Information Bill could be a better tool by which people would demand answers from those who have the power to rule us. Senna, on the issue of the Jean Mensa and her deputy and the elections, look, I said it on this program. This is the niece to the First Lady. She was appointed in the first place to do a bidding. But I want to premise my discussion on this with some biblical and Quranic quotations. Permit me, particularly my brothers and sisters who are Christians, if I do not quote this well, they would understand. And I just made references to from Proverb 1 up to 16. And Proverb 16:1 says that we may make our plans, but God has the last word. That we may make our plans, but God has the word, the last word. Yeah. You can attribute it to what is said in Quran chapter 8 verse 30, that wayamkuruna wayamkurullah wallahu khairu makirin, that they plan and Allah plans, but Allah is the master of all plans. Now if you come to Proverb 1:2 also says that you may think that everything you do is right, but the Lord judges your motives. So the Lord knows the motive of President Nana-Addo, the motives of Jean Mensa, and the motive of her deputies. So they may make the intention and telling us that they are doing that for the sanctity of the elections. The Lord judges what their plans is. And last quotation to the arrogant electoral commissioner and her deputy, that before she goes to church on Sunday, she should take the same Bible and read Proverbs 12:15 to 25. That stupid people always think they are right. Wise people listen to advices. It's the Bible that is talking to her. The NDC must realize that there is a plan in motion. And these people never made secret about that agenda. It's like a system. And the system evolved by itself. That let's get Charlotte Mensa out. And they succeeded in getting Charlotte Mensa out. Let's bring in the niece to the First Lady, something she hadn't denied, not the family. It took Kweku Baku to sit on Good Morning Ghana and says it's not true. And the last time I checked, Kweku Baku was not the spokesperson for the Jinmenses or the Rebekahs. I mean, they could not deny it because you cannot deny your blood, you cannot deny your family relations. I'm saying that this woman was appointed for an agenda. Look, earlier on the position was that the woman was incompetent. Trust me, she's not incompetent. She is indeed very competent in trying to plunge this nation to a state of chaos and anarchy. And Jim Mensah and the president will be held absolutely responsible should any happen in this country. Let them remember that it's God who chooses a leader. But the NDC must stop behaving like tomorrow's souls. We need to demand. We have a moral duty and a responsibility as one of the major stakeholders in this whole business of elections to stand up to this outright and clear attempt by this government that has lost touch with the Ghanaian people. And like I stated earlier, there are people even within MPP who have problems with this government because this country is being run by 4 people. The president, his brother Bonti, the minister of finance, and the nephew of the president, Gabi Ochirdaku. They ran this country. And we know that there are people, leading members in the MPP, who fear about the safety and the security of this country by the actions and inactions of this government. It is about peace, stability. And don't let people begin to have a reason to destabilize the peace we have in this country. The only country we have is Ghana. So the conduct of those who are given the responsibility, particularly to supervise our elections, they need to be extremely careful. Look, I can determine who wins an elections. You can do all these things and Allah has already chosen. Like Senior Comrade Kwesi Pratt indicated about the elections and the halabaloo that came alongside the elections and final elections that we had. Even the creations of districts. You remember, the NDC and MPP have both created districts in this country. And at the time political parties or each of these parties were creating the districts, the view of majority of their members were thinking that, oh, there could be some gerrymandering, it would favor as political. If you observed, it never favored the political parties. Anytime these districts are created, a new constituency created, the opposition wins more seats than the government that engaged in that activity. So Jim Mensah should be very, very careful. They should be very, very careful. Why? What is wrong with the register? A register which indeed validity and sanctity was actually challenged in the Supreme Court of the land, where certain steps were taken as directed by the Supreme Court to cleanse the electoral register so that it could be accepted. These things were all done because the Ghana card that they are doing, the Ghana card, that is the agenda. And we are being told that they are even having people registered. The Ghana card is the agenda. At the end of the day, something that they would have already manipulated would determine the right of people to have their names captured in the voter register. So they think that by that extension, it will give them give them the victory in the elections that we are going to engage in. Perhaps the invisible hand of Allah can never be seen of God, and that's why I premise my point by reading Proverbs in the Bible and reading the Quran chapter 8 verse 30, that they can do everything they want to do. Trust me, the die is cast. They will lose the elections, inshallah, in 2020, and they will lose it in a legendary fashion, because at the end of the day, you cannot rig the elections at any polling station. The NDC need to sit up. We need to begin shedding these cowardice. We need to begin letting the MPP understand that the peace and stability of this country is our collective responsibility. So any action that is being taken by anybody that we see those actions are going to affect the peace and stability as handed over to this super incompetent and super corrupt government, we won't sit by until such a time they move on and they are testing the resolve of the NDC and other positive and progressive minds in this country. They are testing our resolve to resist this attempt to do that. Let they be reminded that we will resist any attempt to truncate the democratic and constitutional processes that all of us have adhered to.
Comrade, thank you very much, and a big thank you to my panelists for today. You had Comrade Ibrahim Murtala Mohammed, who has a very strong interest in the Tamale Central seat that he has declared that will be contesting in 2020. He's a former member of Parliament for Nantong and also a former Deputy Minister for Trade and Industry. And we also had in the studio...
my campaign manager